Chapter 12:12. This time, the people from the Wang clan's blacksmith shop panicked. They had stocked up on these things long ago, waiting for the autumn planting season to earn a large sum of money. However, they did not know why the owner of the shop suddenly stopped them from selling. They were already feeling guilty and had no choice. Moreover, they were discovered by the commoners after the commotion. Although it was not to the extent of defying an imperial decree, it was not a big deal to be locked up in jail for a few days. The middle-aged shopkeeper was an understanding person. Seeing that Yazi was young, he hurriedly came forward and said, "Sir, may I have a word with you?" Yazi saw this and asked, "What's the matter?" The middle-aged shopkeeper looked around, gritted his teeth, and handed over a stack of banknotes from his sleeve. He smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum and said, "This is a little token of my appreciation. Could you please pretend that you didn't see anything?" "Didn't see anything?" Yazi smiled. He took out the banknotes the shopkeeper gave him. Instantly, the commoners and officials who had been paying attention to the shopkeeper were enraged. The smile on the shopkeeper's face froze. "Oh, this is a lot of money." Although Yazi was young, he had replaced his father to enter the magistrate court. He was not even 18 years old and was considered the youngest person in the magistrate court. However, it was also because of this that Yazi's upright and plain-spoken character made everyone in the magistrate court particularly fond of him. At this moment, Yazi took out the banknotes in his hand one by one and waved them casually. The commoners who were watching did not pick them up. Instead, they stared at the shopkeeper with bloodshot eyes. When the shopkeeper and his workers saw this, their legs could not help but tremble. "Yazi, what are you talking about? What do you mean by this?" When the shopkeeper saw that they had fallen out, he became unyielding. "Although Lao Tzu does not know if your lifetime salary is more than the banknotes Lao Tzu gave you, I will remember you." As he spoke, the innkeeper said fiercely, "You guys still don't know, right? Many of the businesses in Chang'an city belong to my Taiyuan Wang clan. If you dare to offend my Wang clan, believe it or not, my Wang clan will make sure that you won't be able to buy even a single grain tomorrow." "He Wang Shi, you're really impressive." At this moment, Niu Weili's voice rang out from behind the crowd. Following him were more than a dozen burly men. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell at a glance that those people were not from the Chang'an local government. Niu Weili's voice caused the shopkeeper's face to stiffen. The next moment, the shopkeeper hurriedly turned around, his face brimming with a friendly smile once again. "Isn't this Lord Niu? What wind blew you here? Let's go to Chang'an Hotel and talk about what happened today." "Chang'an Hotel?" Niu Weili was overjoyed. "Do you know who owns the Chang'an Hotel?" At this moment, if the middle-aged man still didn't know what Niu Weili meant, he would have lived in vain. He asked with a fake smile, "Then according to Lord Niu, what should we do about today's matter?" "Smash it." "Yes. Smash the store. Damn it, we've been waiting for this autumn to plant some life-saving grain. But this son of a bitch, he actually hid the iron hose and refused to sell them? Mother f***, such a person is a scourge. Let's just king kill him." "Yes, Lord Niu, chop his head off." Niu Weili didn't say anything. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked at the angry people around him with a smile. When they were almost done venting their anger, he said, Well, let's go back to the government office and talk about this. After all, talking about it here will damage your Wang clan's reputation." The shopkeeper of the Wang clan, the middle-aged man, finally darkened his face. "So, Lord Niu, you don't want to give me face? Face? You still know about face?" Niu Weili sneered. "Let's not talk about the consequences of this matter." Niu Weili only needed to do things according to the rules. If it didn't involve his god of fortune, Zhang Feng, then everything would be fine. But now, Niu Weili could only mourn silently in his heart. "Brother, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. Men, bring shopkeeper Wang and all the workers here back to the county yamen and close the blacksmith shop for the time being." "Yes." "Niu Weili, do you really want to go against my Wang clan?" This time, the shopkeeper of the Wang clan couldn't help but scold him. He was even cursing. Niu Weili didn't say anything. He even waved his hand to signal the angry yamen runners and the people to not interfere. They watched as the shopkeeper pointed at his nose and scolded him as if they were watching a show. After a full hour, the dozen burly men behind Nyo Whaley couldn't listen to it anymore. They clenched their fists so tightly that they made cracking sounds. At this time, Nyo Whaley was alert. He looked at the shopkeeper and said with a smile, "Are you done scolding? Do you know the consequences of insulting the imperial court and ordering officials?" This time, the shopkeeper finally came to his senses. He took a few steps back cautiously. This time, he asked hesitantly, "It's nothing more than going to jail. Believe it or not, if Lao Tzu goes in today, you'll have to obediently ask Lao Tzu out in less than 2 hours." "Is that so?" The smile on Nyo Whaley's face disappeared instantly. "Men, this shopkeeper called Wang something insulted an imperial court official. Moreover, he insulted him on the street. Everyone here is a witness. According to the laws of the Tang dynasty, beat him to death." "Haha, Master Nyo, you don't need your yamen runners to do this. Lao Tzu will do it." Yes. Let's do it. This son of a bitch will tear him apart alive. Beat him to death." Chapter 12:13. The group of burly men behind Nyo Whaley finally grabbed the burly man in the crowd and slipped away. The burly man was none other than Zheng Tufu from Tonghui Lane. There was nothing much to do on the mountain today, and the feed factory that he was in charge of was on the right track. He had also sold dozens of piglets, but the few acres of land at home were still crying piteously for food. If it were not for the fierce woman at home twisting his ear and dragging him back to Chang'an, he would not have been willing to come back. After all, who did not want to be a boss? Now they wanted him to kill pigs? Forget it, please. Who would do such a heartless thing as a last resort? It was all thanks to Zhang Feng who pointed him in the right direction that this family was finally able to live a prosperous life. Although Zheng Tufu and his son did not know how to do business, they still had Ma Zhou, that brat, with them. Although that kid had been following Zhang Feng for a long time, after all, they had been together for a long time. He was still a loyal friend. Every few days he would come back to help Zhang Feng. At the same time, Zhang Feng would report on the feed factory and the situation of the pigs. Zheng Tufu was originally in a good mood. He was even thinking about going to Chang'an City to bring his wife and children to find a wife for his son and buy a property. At the same time, he would buy some farming tools and replant the wasteland at home. But he did not know. He actually heard about this. And it was about Zhang Feng. Zheng Tufu felt that the sky had fallen. What was this? This was simply targeting Feng Zi. Although Zheng Tufu and his family came early last night during the Mid-Autumn Festival, they didn't see Feng Zi's face. They wanted to go to Feng Zi's mansion, but when they saw their ragged clothes, they gave up in the end. He had heard from the neighbors that the Wang clan's blacksmith shop in Chang'an City should have iron. After all, who in Tonghui Lane did not know that there was a shortage of iron on the mountain? Plus, it was autumn now. Who did not lack iron? But this damned group of people. How could they get the iron stuck? He also knew about the iron and the importance of iron to the people on the mountain. Once there was a problem, it would be a big problem. At this time, the dozen or so men were selected from the army by Yu Qigong, as well as Gao Can and the others on the mountain. The purpose of these people was to hide by Nyo Whaley's side. Investigate this matter. At this moment, in the government office of Chang'an, Nyo Whaley, Gao Can, Yuchi Baolin, Yuchi Baoqi, Zheng Tufu, and the others took their seats. Nyo Whaley's expression was grave as he said, "Over the past 2 days, this official has investigated the shops of the Wang clan, the Zheng clan, the Li clan, and the other major clans in Chang'an. But now it seems that this is the only result. What should we do?" The people sitting there were a bunch of rough people. Their purpose here was to blow things up. This was also the mission that Zhang Feng had given them. Tell them to stir up this muddy water. The bigger the matter, the more advantageous it would be for Zhang Feng. Zheng Tufu just happened to meet a few people. That was why he volunteered to join in. After all, he still had some reputation in Chang'an. It would not be easy for him to be exposed. At this time, Yuchi Baolin said while smoking, "We don't understand these things. Feng Zi's mission is to stir things up. As for how to deal with this matter, Feng Zi wants to leave it to Lord Niu. Hearing this, Niu Weili was also troubled. When he was in Lantian, he had seen the power of the Wang clan. Although he wanted to help Zhang Feng now, he could only do it like today. If this matter blew up, not to mention the benefits and disadvantages, he might even lose his life. After all, if these people wanted to kill someone, it would be a piece of cake. Report. Lord Niu, there are 5 youths in the front hall. They say they want to see you. Youths? At this time, Niu Weili was really troubled. How could he be in the mood to see these people? But he was still cautious. He asked, did they say anything? Lord, one of them said his name is Ma Zhou. Ma Zhou? Ma Zhou? Jing Tufu's eyes lit up. Lord Niu, we don't have to worry anymore. This Ma Zhou is Feng Zi's favorite student. This means that Feng Zi really wants to make a move this time. Quickly invite them in. Niu Weili was instantly energized. He hurriedly got up and went out to welcome them. Gao Can and the others also breathed a sigh of relief. They were fine with fighting and using their fists, but they really couldn't do this. Now that Ma Zhou and the others were here, their good days were really here. Anyway, they had Feng Zi's approval. In this Chang'an hotel, they could eat and drink for free. Where else could they find such a good thing? After a while, Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, Guo Shiyi, Li Yifu, and the others were invited into the hall by the Yamen runners. Ma Zhou then said, Master has already made a decision on this matter. This matter is settled. Master wants us to pass on a message to Lord Niu. Ma Zhou nodded his head and said, Master has already made a decision on this matter. Niu Weili asked with a passionate look, what message? Lord Niu, are you afraid of trouble? Chapter 12:14. Chang'an was once again shrouded in dense fog. And at this moment, the night patrol soldiers of Chang'an City were continuously passing through every corner of Chang'an City. Within Chang'an City, apart from these people, there was no one else to be seen. But in the darkness, burly figures were rapidly shuttling out from every corner of Chang'an University. And then scattered in the darkness. Yan Lai Restaurant. At this moment, Yan Lai Restaurant was still brightly lit. Due to Zhang Feng's actions at the meeting the day before yesterday, Yan Lai Restaurant's popularity had simply risen. Usually, there were very few guests who could stay overnight. But now, there was simply an endless stream of people. There were no empty seats. And that Yan Lai Restaurant's brothel keeper's mouth seemed to be fixed below her ears, not moving at all. The night before yesterday, because of their ruckus, they had actually disturbed the emperor. Yesterday, all the major brothels in Chang'an had suffered a calamity, and Yan Lai Restaurant had also been severely punished by the internal servants department. But this did not affect Yan Lai Restaurant's popularity. Because of that group of musicians that Zhang Feng had borrowed previously. At this moment, Yan Lai Restaurant had been playing this song from morning till night. This had caused that group of musicians to suffer, playing the song that Zhang Feng had composed over and over again. Although it had greatly increased their popularity, and had even been directly booked for future performances by some wealthy families in Chang'an City, but their hands and mouths could not bear it. But now, there was no other way. Because the 4 great demon kings had returned. If they did not serve these lords well, not to mention living, they would not even be able to take care of themselves. In a compartment on the 2nd floor of Yan Lai Restaurant, Cheng Chumo and the rest had long been drunk from the compliments of a group of men and women. Even that Du Go was already lying on the ground drunk. At this moment, following the arrival of Yuqi Baolin and the rest, after whispering to Li Chengqian and the rest for a while, Li Chengqian gave a signal with his eyes. Cheng Chumo waved his hand and said, "Everyone." Instantly, the clamor in the entire Yan Lai Restaurant temporarily stopped. Everyone upstairs and downstairs looked at the people on the 2nd floor. "Everyone, it's rare for us to leave the mountain today. I'm sure you don't know the purpose of our visit, right?" Tonight, the 4 great demon kings had come out of seclusion to treat them. Those invited to the banquet were all famous stubborn people in Chang'an. More importantly, they were the disciples of the aristocratic families, as well as the children of the princes, dukes, and officials. How could these people not know their identities? At this time, seeing Chungchumo shouting, he hurriedly asked, "Brother Li, what happened to Brother Chin? We're all brothers. If we can help, we'll definitely help." "Yeah. We are all brothers. What's the matter? Just tell me. We have some connections in Chang'an City." Seeing this, Li Chengqian exchanged a look with Chungchumo. Then he stood up and cupped his fists, saying, "Everyone, I presume you all know the recent situation in Chang'an City? Lack of iron?" Someone asked hesitantly. Li Chengqian nodded. "It's a lack of iron. Now, the dean of White Deer College is anxious day and night because the people can't plant in autumn. So, we want to do something. After all, you saw what happened last night. However, Li Chengqian, promise you that if anyone can get iron, I'll buy it at the original price. I'll also give the person who sells the most iron a place to go to Chang'an University. What do you think?" In an instant, all the stubborn people were in an uproar. Who didn't want to make a name for themselves? Previously, everyone thought that Chang'an University and White Deer College were like the 5 snakes and scorpions. But now, it was different. As Zhang Feng's reputation grew, more and more things happened. Now, as long as the students wore the uniforms of these 2 colleges, they could do whatever they wanted in Chang'an City. How could they miss out on such a good thing? But they also knew that this iron matter was serious. They couldn't help but feel conflicted. Seeing this, Li Chengqian secretly said, as expected, "Everyone, do you know that the plague of locusts and the food shortage have already hurt the foundation of the Tang dynasty? Once the autumn planting is delayed, there will be a real food shortage next year. Not to mention the people, I'm afraid that the farmers in your fields will." Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. Although there weren't many stubborn people who received the invitation tonight. But these were all people who had a say in Chang. They knew more than the others. At this time, seeing that Li Chengqian wanted to say something but stopped, someone couldn't help but ask, "Young Master Li, don't be so secretive. We've drunk together so many times. If we're brothers, just say it. We'll try our best to help. But I also have some fields. If there's a problem with the people's autumn planting this year, what will it have to do with us?" "Good question." Li Chengqian sighed heavily and said, "Master Yuan Tianggang, you should be familiar with him, right?" Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. Li Chengqian said again, "The night before yesterday, the dean of White Deer College and Master Yuan performed a ritual in the mansion to sense the heaven. This year's plague of locusts is just a test. There will be a more serious plague of locusts next year. Now, I don't need to say anything, right? What? There will be a plague of locusts." Chapter 12:15. Li Chengqian saw the sudden change in everyone's expressions. He couldn't help but feel particularly comfortable. All of them knew about this. Especially since Zhang Feng had said before that this year's locust plague was nothing, but next year's locust plague would be the real horror. They asked Zhang Feng why. He directly picked up the hoe and dug a few rakes in the field. Looking at the densely packed eggs, everyone was terrified. Damn it. If it was so serious this year, then wouldn't it be over next year? But what Zhang Feng didn't tell them was, under his medicine, if these eggs were led into the water source of the field during autumn planting, most of the eggs would be indirectly killed. These things were all for later. It was Li Shimin's serious warning not to spread it out. After all, once this matter was leaked out, it would cause chaos in the world. The reason why Li Chengqian said all this at this time was that he had been taught by Zhang Feng. He also didn't understand why Zhang Feng ordered this matter to be blown out of proportion as soon as he came up the mountain. He also didn't know what the consequences would be if this matter was spread out. But Li Chengqian still decided to do as Zhang Feng said. At this time, Li Chengqian's words were meaningful. And among these stubborn people, there were also some thoughtful people who silently pondered some rumors they heard a few days ago when they were farming. And what the recent prosperity of the fried locust eggs meant. Li Chengqian picked up a crispy fried locust on the table and threw it into his mouth, chewing it until everyone's hair stood on end. And Li Chengqian wasn't in a hurry. He slowly tasted the fried locust while tasting the white wine he brought. It was very pleasant. However, he was able to endure it, but not everyone was able to do the same. Li Chengqian, Chungchumo, and the others also minded their own business and ate and drank. At this time, a stubborn person hurriedly went up to the second floor, bowed, and said, "Young Master Li, what you just said, is it true? Is it true?" Li Chengqian knocked on the plate and asked in return, "Then look at the things on this plate. Why did they appear before the locust plague appeared and now appear again? Didn't you go to your field to dig them up?" With this question, the young man's expression turned even uglier. His family's situation had already been discovered long ago. Furthermore, his family was not as well off as these people. It was only because the young master of Minister Zhou of the Chamberlain of Dependencies had some connections that he was able to sneak into this circle. His family only had a few hundred mu of land and some small businesses. They were a true merchant family. He also relied on his stubborn identity to mingle in this circle and find out some useful information. Or he could have some business dealings with them and get some help. Now that he heard Li Chengqian say so, how could he still hold back? Once the locust plague broke out again, his family's little bit of wealth would be gone. "Young Master Li, may I trouble you to tell me what to do with the locusts?" When Li Chengqian heard that, he smiled slightly and said, "About the locusts, my dean is compassionate and trying to think of a solution. After all, you all know that the locust plague this time is all thanks to my dean." However, he also said that the autumn planting this time is the key. If there is a lack of crops at the beginning of spring next year, then in the second half of next year, the autumn planting this time is the key to whether we can safely survive the locust plague next year. After all, the dean once said that if everyone picks up firewood, the fire will be stronger. Once you only care about protecting yourselves, then... Moreover, the food shortage this time, coupled with the fact that the people can't plant, when the news of the locust plague spreads, I think those angry people have seen what happened in Chang'an in the past 2 days. When the time comes, do you think you can protect yourselves? This time, all the stubborn people's faces suddenly changed. In the past few days, the crazy people, because they couldn't buy iron and couldn't carry out the autumn planting, had already broken out in Chang'an. Today, everyone had heard that the shopkeeper of the Wang clan's blacksmith shop in Chang'an city was beaten to death. The Wang clan. That's the Wang clan of Taiwan. He was beaten to death by angry people. Even their clan leader and the emperor couldn't do anything about it. At this time, when everyone saw that, how could they dare to have any thoughts? They hurriedly asked, "Then may I ask young Master Li, what should we do about this matter?" Seeing that, Li Chengqian looked at Chengchumo and the others and said with a smile, "It's very simple. After all, the people just want to have a bite to eat, and grain is their foundation. The grain that you grow and your industries will eventually fall into the hands of the people. If the people are hit by a disaster, do you think you can avoid it? Therefore, this young master has come this time because we are all brothers. I would like to give everyone a piece of advice. That is, if you have iron in your hands, and if you have iron that you are not using, sell it to the people. Not only can you win a good reputation, but you can also let the people remember your name. Even if the people are really hit by a disaster, for the sake of your face today, the people won't touch you, and your industries will definitely sell better." Our dean said that everyone should paddle a big boat. Now, do you understand the meaning of this boat? Chapter 12:16. Li Chengqian's words sounded awkward and official. After all, this was his first time doing something like this. In the past, he had always been envious of Zhang Feng's bragging. Now that he was personally involved, however, he realized that it was not that easy to brag about it. At this time, after the matter was settled, Li Chengqian and the others hurried back to the room. After sending the girl away, they gathered together again. After exchanging glances with each other, the few of them burst into a burst of comfortable laughter. "Damn, it feels so good to brag. No wonder Feng Zi likes to nag," Zhang Sun said, smacking his lips. Li Chengqian waved his hand. His expression became serious. "This is a big net that Feng Zi has set. Our purpose here is to mess up this matter. Only by messing things up can we buy time for the people who are looking for the mine." When everyone heard that, their expressions gradually became serious. Zhang Feng was really angry this time. He had sent all the people who could be sent out to stir up trouble. Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, and the others were sent to investigate the real situation in Chang'an city. Wang Lin and the others were mainly there to stir up trouble. Once they found out about the properties of the people of the 5 families and 7 clans, they would do everything they could. And their main purpose was to spread rumors. Although this seemed simple, the degree of danger in every step was obvious. However, this was all to buy time for the people who were looking for the mine. In other words, they were diverting the trouble. Let the people of the 5 families and 7 clans be busy dealing with the mess in Chang'an city and have no time to deal with the matter of Mount Longsho. Alright, next, let's discuss what to do tomorrow morning. It's best to spread the news by night. At the morning market tomorrow, everyone will hear that the people of the 5 families and 7 clans are deliberately holding back the iron mines. Next, it's up to them. At this time, Dugo was lying on the table dizzily. He rubbed his head and asked, "What if these people don't know how to do it?" "Don't know how to do it?" Li Qingqian smiled coldly. Think about it. Think about it with Feng Zi's mind. Dugo thought about it and wanted to say something, but just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, his expression changed. "You're saying that if we make a big deal out of this, the 5 families and 7 clans, especially the people of the Wang clan, will temporarily close down their businesses in Chang'an. Naturally, the grain stores and so on will cause a temporary crisis?" Li Qingqian nodded and said with praise, "And according to Feng Zi, this is also why Feng Zi said that we embezzled the food. If the Wang clan thinks this way, then what about the others? Their businesses will also be affected. Once that happens, the people won't be able to buy food. Think about it." As he spoke, Li Qingqian crossed his legs and looked at the crowd, imitating Zhang Feng, and said, taste it carefully." Tasting chicken? Do you still need supplies for this? Wasn't this Zhang Feng's trick? However, this move was truly ruthless. However, this also showed that Zhang Feng really wanted to compete with the people of the 5 families and 7 clans this time. If they couldn't settle the matter of the iron mine, Zhang Feng's plan, the garrison in Xiaozi city, and the iron ship trade route would all be affected. The matter of the people was actually just incidental. However, if this matter wasn't resolved, it would really become a big problem. Zhang Feng was only making a big deal out of it and using the anger of the people to offset the threat of the 5 families and 7 clans. No matter how powerful the 5 families and 7 clans were, they couldn't go against the people of the world, right? However, Zhang Feng couldn't wait for the 5 families and 7 clans to go against the people of the world. At that time, as long as Li Qingqian and the others found the Lord Zhangsun and fanned the ghost fire, the Lord Zhangsun would definitely tell the emperor. How could the emperor not know about such a big thing happening in Chang'an? Moreover, he had long wanted to deal with this group of people. When the time came, the emperor only needed to use the slogan of pleading for the people of the world, and the 5 families and 7 clans would be in danger. This was Zhang Feng's plan under the circumstances that he didn't know the identities of Li Qingqian, Lao Li, and the others. However, this was different for Li Qingqian. He wanted to take all the credit for himself. After all, he was the crown prince. He had been on the throne for so many years, but he hadn't made any outstanding achievements. If this matter was done well, then the achievement of eliminating the 5 families and 7 clans, as well as Guanlong, which were 2 huge mountains on the back of the Tang dynasty, would be enough to be praised by future generations. At the thought of this, Li Qingqian's heart became eager again. He was completely unaware that everything they were doing at this time was already within the scope of Li Shimin's surveillance. In the bedchamber of the Taiji Palace, little Gizi was like a butterfly, going in and out of Li Shimin's bedchamber every once in a while. At this time, Li Shimin was standing on the attic of the 3rd floor of the bedchamber, looking down at Chang'an city hidden in the fog. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Your Majesty, at this time, Hao Chujun and the others have already settled down in the tavern, but Wang Lin has also come out of the Crown Prince's room in Swallow Descent Restaurant." Li Shimin frowned. "Investigate again. By the way, is there any movement from the 5 families and 7 clans tonight?" Little Gizi heard and said, "There is no movement for the time being, but the Wang clan's people seem to have closed down most of the industries in Chang'an." Li Shimin heard this. Only then did he nod and smile. It seems that Feng Zi's plan is working. Send a message to the people looking for the mines to speed up. As you wish. Chapter 12:17. Niu Jinda had a very comfortable life these 2 days. Although he went up the mountain to look for minerals, the things that had been suppressed some time ago disappeared after he killed 2 big wild boars with his bare hands. Eating roasted wild boar meat and drinking white wine, his life was even more comfortable than in the mansion. But the only thing that was not comfortable was that the ore had not been found yet. Mount Longsho was too big. Damn it, Zhang Feng did not tell him clearly where to find it. After leaving Jinyao sect on the first day, he basically arrived at the boundary of Mount Longsho. But after more than a day of searching, not to mention the ore. In addition to the yellow soil, there were only the lush trees that grew crazily. This made Niu Jinda more irritable. There was only a little more than a day left before the opening day of Zhang Feng Academy. Moreover, Qing Yaojin acted as Yuqigong, and even the emperor sent people everywhere to look for it. How could he not be anxious? Mount Longsho was big, but with so many people and he heard that the people of the Wang clan were also looking for it, Mount Longsho was only so big. Originally, he was also a person who was used to living in the wild, and he knew better than anyone the principle of not entering the forest late at night. But tonight, Niu Jinda had long forgotten this matter behind his ears. After all, at this time, if he could find the iron ore earlier, not only could he repay Zhang Feng for saving his life, but also he could show off in front of everyone. How could this not make him anxious? At this time, Niu Jinda ate a large pile of barbecued meat and fell asleep in a drunken stupor. But at this time, there was a disturbance in the camp, which made Niu Jinda raise his heavy eyelids and roar with some anger. What are you doing in the middle of the night? Dezhuang, come over here. In Niu Jinda's angry roar, a group of people came over with something in their hands, trembling with fear. Niu Jinda was still lying on the ground, staring at them and asked, "What were you doing just now?" "Master, we've discovered something strange." As he spoke, the burly man named Dezhuang hesitantly handed over a handful of white stones to Niu Jinda. Although it was called a stone, its texture was soft, just like the smell of old yeast. Niu Jinda's interest was piqued. "What is this?" "I don't know. Ergo dug it out from under the grass when he was taking a dump." Dezhuang told the whole story honestly. Niu Jinda's interest was piqued. Holding a torch, he carefully identified the stone before hurriedly asking someone to bring him to the place where he found it. He had been in charge of escorting iron ores up the mountain and had seen iron ores before. They were similar to this thing. The color was the same, but the smell was a little stronger. Niu Jinda walked closer to take a look. Under the illumination of the torch, the ground under their feet was already white. Moreover, the vegetation in this place was even more lush. Even at this time, there was an indescribable smell. Niu Jinda could not remain calm. He drew a big knife from his waist and slashed at the ground. In an instant, a large piece of stone that was the same as the one in his hand was revealed. Moreover, there was a crisp sound when the big knife hit the ground. Apart from this stone, what else could it be? He remembered that Zhang Feng had once said that this thing was hidden underground. This thing seemed to be hidden underground, and its color was exactly the same. Could it be that this thing was an iron mine? The iron ore they had been looking for? At this time, Niu Jinda could not remain calm. He waved his hand and said, "Who knows about iron ore? Come, let Lao Tzu see if this thing is an iron ore." What was this? This was a great contribution. Although Niu Jinda was sure that this thing was an iron ore, he still found someone in the mansion who knew a little about iron ore to be careful. He came to see for himself. That person held the stone and looked at it, then used his sleeve to wipe it. He even held the stone and used a knife to hang a little powder and put it in his mouth to taste. "How is it? Is it an iron ore?" Niu Jinda squatted beside that person and asked with a fervent look in his eyes. That person hesitated. What nonsense is there? Show it to Lao Tzu." That person was a little hesitant. Although this thing had some characteristics of iron ore, he was a little unsure if this thing was an iron ore. After all, this thing was a little light and had a pungent smell. If it was a real iron ore, it would not have such a smell. However, under Niu Jinda's urging, he stammered and said, "Sir, This thing is indeed an iron ore. Although it looks like an iron ore, I'm not sure if it is. After all, it was dug out from the ground and is different from what we normally see. Tell me the result. Niu Jinda was too lazy to care about these things and asked. That person was frightened and hurriedly gritted his teeth and said, "It should be an iron ore." This person's uncertainty made Niu Jinda's heart waver. Just as he said, the iron ore they had seen was dug out from the ground for a long time. How could they have seen iron ore that was just dug out? At this time, Niu Jinda did not know what to do. However, looking at the white stones all over the ground, Niu Jinda gritted his teeth and said, "Collect quickly. We must reach Chang'an city before dawn." Chapter 12:18. In the past 2 days, Zhang Feng had spent all his time on mining and spreading rumors, so he had a lot of free time. But this leisure was also relative. After all, 3 days of preparation was quite rushed. Last night, old Xiaozai, Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao, and even Zhang Shan went up the mountain early. And Zhang Feng's wooden house was also demolished. At this time, they entered a spacious and bright villa. Last night, it took a lot of effort for him and Mokido to finally make the glass. However, due to the lack of technology, they could only make frosted glass. It was the kind of glass that had carvings on it, and the scenery on both sides couldn't be seen. Even on a piece of glass, one could see 2 or 3 colors. Although Zhang Feng was still a little dissatisfied. But he could only make do with it. When these pieces of glass were put on, it would have a different flavor. In the room, Jingshu and Yuyao carefully dressed Zhang Feng, and even put on the Confucian robe that he wore during the opening ceremony of Chang'an University last time. Originally, according to Zhang Feng's intention, he was going to wear a Chinese tunic suit during the opening ceremony. But now, under the strong opposition of old Xiaozai and the others, Zhang Feng could only admit defeat. At this time, in another single-family villa on the side of Zhang Feng's villa, Chang'an and the other Confucian scholars also changed into white and blue Confucian robes and slowly walked out of their own villa. As soon as they went out, a touch of unconcealable excitement appeared on their faces. This academy was basically taken care of by the 4 of them. And to be able to live in such a villa was enough for them to show off for the rest of their lives. The thatched waterfall that they talked about before was simply bullshit at this time. How could it be more comfortable than living in this villa? From the inside to the outside, Zhang Feng basically did it himself. From the bed to the furnishings and so on, Zhang Feng basically decorated it according to modern classical decoration knowledge. Not to mention them. Even if Liu Ban was alive, Zhang Feng was also confident that he could beat them. When the 4 of them left the villa, they bumped into Ma Zhou and the others who were waiting for them. Ma Zhou, Li Chengqian, and the others naturally knew about today's big event, so they returned to White Deer College early. Seeing the 4 great scholars come out, Li Chengqian reported what happened at the foot of the mountain in the past 2 days. However, the 4 great scholars were obviously not interested in these conspiracies. Instead, they asked, "How is the market at the foot of the mountain? Everyone who should be here is here, right?" "They're here." Li Chengqian was a little depressed. He originally wanted to flatter them, but he didn't expect that the 4 great Confucians weren't interested in such things. Shang'an nodded and said, "That's good. Make the necessary preparations. The sect opening ceremony will officially begin at noon. You can go and entertain the guests. Right now, at the mountain gate, it's basically Teacher Wenji, Teacher Zi Huai, and the people from Tong Hui Fong who are socializing. Should we prepare to lead the guests to the academy?" Shang'an didn't want to say anything at first. However, seeing that Li Chengqian actually said something like that, he couldn't help but say meaningfully, "Do as you see fit. Just don't affect the plan." "Yes." Li Chengqian and the others hurriedly left. At this moment, Ouyang Sun couldn't help but look at Li Chengqian's back and say, "Is there something wrong with this kid?" "You noticed it too?" Shang'an asked. Ouyang Sun nodded. "I don't know what's wrong with this kid recently. He's a little impatient when it comes to doing things or his homework. This isn't good. Should we tell Fengzi?" After all, Li Chengqian was the crown prince. Moreover, the things he learned were basically the sum of everyone's knowledge. Most importantly, under Zhang Feng's teaching method that treated everyone equally, Li Chengqian obviously didn't have any advantages. It would be strange if he wasn't anxious. They looked at Li Chengqian's back and thought for a moment. Then they shook their heads and said, "Let's go eat first. We still have a big show later." "I really envy that brat Zhang Feng. I wonder if he's awake now." They chatted and laughed as they walked towards the dining hall. On the other side, Qian Wanli was tirelessly leading the students of the academy around Shao Mountain. They shouted the slogan, 1, 2, 1, and ran in an orderly manner. When the orderly shouts reached the mountain gate, the people in the market at the foot of the mountain couldn't help but look sideways. Everyone already knew the teaching method of White Deer College. They knew it and even learned the morning exercises. However, when they saw the thousands of youths dressed in white and blue with the words, "White Deer," embroidered on their chests, it still gave them the illusion of a magnificent army with thousands of men and horses. At this moment, there wasn't a single peddler in the market. As early as yesterday, everyone had cooperated with the students in the mountain to clean up the square. They had even set up 3 rows of tables and benches on the straight cement and rubber road, extending from the mouth of the canyon to the front of the statue at the mountain gate. All the customers sitting on the benches, regardless of whether they were students of Chang'an University, Imperial College, Hongwen-Guan, the Emperor's Edict, or the Confucian scholars of Chang'an, all stood up and looked enviously at the orderly team that slowly bypassed the food factory at the mountain gate and jogged up the mountain from the mountain gate. At this moment, the ones who were the most excited were those who had sent their children to the White Deer Institute. At this moment, when they saw their own children in the group of mighty runners, they excitedly waved their hands and shouted the names of their children. They were afraid that the people around them wouldn't know, so they pulled the crowd and pointed out who their children were. However, there was one person among them who was excited and also a little annoyed. This person was Qian Tong. Chapter 12:19. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Get out of the way. Minister of Works Li Shaogong, Lord Li has arrived. At this moment, along with the clamor from afar, everyone suddenly heard that a heavyweight, Li Shaogong, had arrived. Who was Li Shaogong? He was the prince. He represented the imperial family. If he could come, did that mean that the emperor would come as well? At this moment, everyone unconsciously opened up a path. They saw Li Shaogong in a purple official's robe, Duke Chen beside him, and Li Shimin and Li Yuan following closely behind them. The old village chief didn't know what position Li Shaogong held at first, thinking that he was one of the heads of the Ministry of Works. However, under the whispers of the old scholar and the others, he learned of Li Shaogong's identity and the identity of Duke Chen following him. Only then did he lean on his walking stick and greet them with a face full of smiles. Ayaya, this old man greets the prince, greets Duke Chen. This is Zhang Feng's housekeeper, as well as the person in charge of White Deer College. Someone who knew the old village chief's identity hurriedly introduced him to Li Shaogong. Hearing this, Li Shaogong raised his eyelids and glanced at the old village chief. He cupped his hands and said, "I've long heard that Zhang Feng has a virtuous wife on the mountain. So it's you, old sir?" The old village chief was so excited. What was this? This was Prince Li Shaogong. That identity, that position, the old village chief was so excited that he almost couldn't breathe. However, Li Shaogong was just being polite. Then, he cupped his hands towards the old scholar in a scholarly robe and said with emotion, "Brother Zihuai, we haven't seen each other for many years. The old man wanted to have a chat with you last time on the flower boat. Brother Shaogong, once Fengzi's matter is settled, the old man will definitely come in person." "Ah, good. After the two of them talked for a while, they didn't dare to be careless. After all, both the emperor and the retired emperor were present. Although they were now in disguise, they couldn't be careless. "Lao Li, you're here? Please come up the mountain." The old elementary scholar hurriedly bowed. This time, everyone was in an uproar. When it came to Imperial Prince Li Shaogong, he only cupped his fists. But to a merchant, how could he? "You guys don't know, right? I've heard that Lao Li has a great background. White Deer College was basically funded by Lao Li." At this moment, a person who knew a little bit of the ropes began to boast complacently. In an instant, everyone understood Li Shimin's identity. Seeing this, that person stood up complacently again and said, "You guys probably don't know who that old man is. He's the honorary vice dean of White Deer College. Whether it's Mr. Zihuai, the ministers in the imperial court, the four great scholars, or that godson Simiao, he's been through life and death with them." What? Everyone was shocked. He couldn't help but sigh. "I've heard that godly Dr. Sun Simiao hasn't gone down since he went up Shao Mountain. Now that I think about it, it's true, but I heard that this is the medical course of White Deer Academy. For example, that rumor from before said that Dean Zhang personally reattached a severed leg, and even the bones were exposed. I've heard of this too. What's so strange about it? In the past, this blood exchange was just a legend. But if you guys went to the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, you should know that Mr. Yushan vomited blood and fainted. After President Zhang patted, pinched, and rubbed him, he woke up. Isn't it magical? This, everyone listened as if it was a miracle. No one knew how Zhang Feng did it, but they had only heard rumors that it was the miraculous medical knowledge of White Deer Institute. Today, most of the people who had come were here because of this. After all, everyone would encounter a time when they were injured. What was this? If they learned this, not only would they be able to provide for themselves, they could even open a clinic. The more they thought about it, the more impatient the doctors in the crowd were. As for the students from the two academies, they couldn't sit still either. White Deer College was indeed a good place. Frankly speaking, they were going there to become grand scholars. But they knew their own situation. Who could guarantee that they would be able to become grand scholars? It wasn't a big deal before the White Deer Academy had appeared, but now that the White Deer Academy had appeared, everyone couldn't sit still. Not only could they come to school, but at the very least, even if they couldn't become grand scholars after 3 years, they could at least have a living guarantee. At this moment, everyone in Shao Mountain Market was excited. Every time they saw a customer who could go up the mountain, they would comment on it. But at this moment, a voice rang out. Everyone's heart couldn't help but sink. Cui Mengshan from the Cui family from Qinghe, Shandong has arrived. Shandong? Cui family from Qinghe? Cui Mengshan? Zhao Ri? Isn't this the Shandong landowning family? Is he here to cause trouble? Chapter 12:20. Zhang Feng didn't know what happened at the foot of the mountain. At this time, he was speechless as he watched Jing Shu carefully trim his eyebrows and the beard around his lips with a razor. Li Chengqian and the others also came to report from time to time who had arrived. Zhang Feng was also speechless. He wanted to just let it go. But once he said so, Jing Shu would hold him down. At this time, Li Chengqian's voice sounded again. "Fengzi, Mr. Bo sure asked you to hurry up. Duke Chen and Prince Li are both here." Zhang Feng looked at Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao in the mirror speechlessly and said, "I say, this should be enough, right?" Jing Shu carefully trimmed Zhang Feng's eyebrows. "Prince Zhang, you are now a great scholar. You are equal to Mr. Bo Shi, Duke Chen, and the others. And there is a rule for the opening of the academy. You can't go out until the auspicious time. Prince Zhang must know this, right? So, I hope Prince Zhang can wait for a while. The auspicious time is less than an hour away. Please wait for a while." Zhang Feng was speechless. He took the two women's hands and said, "Well, you two also have a rest. I have to think about who will come later and make some preparations." "What preparations do you need to make?" Jing Shu was surprised. But she still sat opposite Zhang Feng obediently and asked. Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "You just wait and see. The people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans are not fools. At this time, they definitely won't jump out. But think about it, who else do I, Zhang Feng, have enemies?" This time, Zhang Yuyao was really confused. She didn't know anything about Zhang Feng. Everything was in a mess. She didn't know how many enemies Zhang Feng had. But in her memory, it seemed that except for the people of Guanlong and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, Zhang Feng didn't seem to have any opposition to him. But Jing Shu frowned slightly and said, "You mean the people of Shandong?" Zhang Feng nodded. At this time, Zhang Yuyao's face changed slightly. Even if she didn't go out often, she knew about the nobles in Shandong. After all, it was the hometown of Confucius, the birthplace of the world's literature. Those landowning households, on the other hand, considered themselves to be the descendants of Confucius. To make trouble at this time. Then, involuntarily, Zhang Yuyao was about to cry. She held Zhang's hand tightly and said, "Prince Zhang, if they come at this time, they hadn't." "Don't say it, Sister Yuyao." Jing Shu hurriedly interrupted Zhang Yuyao and said, "Prince Zhang will deal with this matter in this way." But last time on the Mid-Autumn Eve, they should have seen Prince Zhang's ability. Those who can come to Mount Shao at this time shouldn't be ordinary people. Zhang Feng's eyes lit up when he heard this. He really hoped that the person who came was someone important. Although he knew that those who could come at this time should be at the same level as Yu Shernan and the others, he knew nothing about the nobles in Shandong. At this time, Jing Shu asked, "Jing Shu, how many people from Shandong can come?" The nobles in Shandong are mainly divided into the Heqing Chui clan, the Lanling Shao clan, the Langyawang clan, and the Langya clan. But among these four clans, there are 13 officials who are above the third rank in the imperial court, not to mention other official positions and the political connections they control. Zhang Feng's heart sank when he heard this. Zhang Feng really knew little about the nobles in Shandong. He only knew that the nobles in Shandong were a group of idiots who only knew about the things and jumped out to make trouble for Li Shimin. But now it seemed that things were not as simple as he thought. Officials above the 5th rank had to attend the morning court and had official positions that could cover the sky with one hand. These four clans had 13 third-rank officials? What did this mean? In the imperial court at this time, whoever had the most people would have the final say. These 13 third-rank officials, plus his subordinates, might have more subordinates than 13 fourth-rank and fifth-rank officials. In this case, then things would be difficult to handle. Poor Li Shimin. Although he was said to control all the officials in the imperial court, but among them, if he excluded the people from Shandong, the people from the 5 clans and 7 families, as well as the people from Guanlong, how many people did he have? At this moment, Zhang Feng couldn't help but mourn for Li Shimin, who he respectfully called the Emperor of all ages. "Feng Zi, not good, Chui Mengshan from the Qinghe Chui clan is here." At this time, Li Qingxian's voice was serious at the door, and then he added, "Mr. Bo Shi and the others are asking if the opening ceremony is about to start. Otherwise, there might be changes." Zhang Feng's face darkened. "Then let's start. I want to see what this Chui Mengshan is up to." "All right." Li Qingxian thought for a while, and then left. Chapter 12:21. At this time, in front of the teaching building of the academy, rows of seats had already been placed. On the high platform in front of the teaching building, the 4 great scholars, Li Yuan, and the others had already sat on it, and the seat in the center was empty. Anyone with discerning eyes could tell that it was prepared for Zhang Feng. After all, Zhang Feng was the main character today. But when Chui Mengshan and the others from the Chui family of Qinghe arrived, Li Yuan and the others on the stage couldn't help but change their faces. Even the people below the stage who knew this master also changed their faces at this time. Needless to say, the people of Shandong's aristocratic families had always been a little resistant to other people opening academies. To their knowledge, most of the people in the academy had to have a famous teacher to be qualified. As for those who had a famous teacher, they had to be from a clan in Shandong or an outstanding talent from Confucius and Mencius to be qualified. But in their eyes, Zhang Feng was born in the wild. And what Zhang Feng stood for was not the same as what they stood for. Instead, it was somewhat contradictory. It would be strange if they didn't come. Li Shimin had already warned Shandong. And he deliberately let people spread Zhang Feng's poem in Shandong. The main purpose was that he was afraid that this group of bastards would come to make trouble. But now, obviously it was too late. This bunch of bastards had obviously turned a deaf ear to his words. The most direct thing was that Zhang Feng was going to find out who he really was. Although this was an opportunity, once he showed his cards at this time, it would give Zhang Feng 2 choices. At this time, it was not to say whether they could be brothers or not. Instead, he put a multiple-choice question in front of Zhang Feng. Either he would go down the dark path with him, or he would stand on the same side as the people of Shandong's aristocratic families, the 7 clans and Guanlong. After all, The people of Guanlong chose to believe Zhang Feng for the time being because Zhang Feng didn't know Li Shimin's identity and was sure that Li Shimin didn't dare to show his cards at this time. But now, once Li Shimin showed his cards, the people of Guanlong would definitely come to ask Zhang Feng first. After all, at this time, Zhang Feng and Li Shimin's industries had slowly begun to infiltrate Guanlong's industries. This was a big plan. Once there was a mistake now, then, thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but stand up with a slightly gloomy face. But Yu Shernan seemed to understand Li Shimin's meaning at this time and hurriedly pressed him down. Looking at Cui Mengshan, who was slowly walking up the stage, Yu Shernan clasped his fists and said, "Brother Cui, long time no see. I didn't expect you to come in person today." Cui Mengshan's appearance was a little thin. His gray hair was meticulously combed, but it still couldn't hide his baldness. His mustache was also a little curly, but it was unknown what he had smeared on it. At this time, it looked hard, as if it was glued to his lips. His plain face was a little dark. At first glance, he looked like a farmer. But this was excluding his pair of triangular eyes and thin lips, which gave people a sharp and unkind first impression. However, those who knew him well would know that he was terrifying. Not only was he sharp and unkind, but he was also unusually cruel and merciless. If someone dared to disobey him, that person would be unlucky. But his status was not low at all. He was known as the 38th generation great-grandson of Confucius. Even Li Shimin would have a headache when he saw this title. In addition, he had a lot of titles, such as the #1 Confucian in Qinghe, and so on. At this time, seeing Yu Shernan like this, he just slightly clasped his fists and went straight to the main seat, ready to sit down. At this time, Yu Shernan stood in front of that chair unintentionally and looked at Cui Mengshan with calm eyes, saying, "Brother Cui, I didn't know you were coming, so old man specially prepared a seat for you," while speaking. Yu Shernan pointed to the chairs that two children were putting next to Ouyang Kai and Lu Hongwen. Cui Mengshan glanced at the chair sitting at the edge and squinted at Yu Shernan, saying, "Brother Bashi, old man calls you Brother Bashi for the time being. Do you think that old man doesn't deserve this seat?" This time, everyone present was in an uproar. What the hell? This old guy didn't hide it at all. Even in the main house, he did it according to the identity of a guest. Moreover, didn't he know what day it was today? What was this? This was simply a slap in the face. A naked slap in the face. Yu Shernan slowly put away the smile on his face. But at this time, the old Xiaocai and Li Shimin got up almost at the same time. They were sitting on the right side of the main seat, close to Li Yuan and Li Shimin. At this time, the two got up and were just seen by Cui Mengshan. Cui Mengshan said with a fake smile, "Oh, isn't this brother Zihuai who has been hiding with his tail between his legs for many years? What, you also want to stop old man?" He didn't even look at Li Gang. Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but have a murderous look in his eyes. "This old thing I gave you face, didn't I?" But at this time, seeing that the atmosphere was getting heavier, Duke Chenho Junji got up with a smile and said, "Brother Cui, how have you been? Come, how about sitting with old man?" Chapter 12:22. Originally, Cui Mengshan glanced at Ho Junji and wanted to say something harsh. But he inadvertently saw Li Shimin's eyes. He couldn't help but be slightly cautious. This gaze, although Li Shimin and Li Yuan had put on makeup at this moment, the majesty in their eyes that was above everyone still existed. This was a feeling that might not seem like much to others. But to the people on the stage, it was an existence that could reach heaven with a single thought. Only now did Cui Mengshan remember what his clansmen had said on the way here. White Deer College was said to be managed by His Highness the Crown Prince and that Zhang Feng was just an errand boy supporting the facade. But this was just to fool the outsiders. How many tricks had Zhang Feng come up with in this period of time? At this time, if anyone still believed this, they would be a true fool. As for the matter of the retired emperor being the honorary vice principal, that was even more impossible. Given the retired emperor's temper, if he came up with such a thing, wouldn't the entire world know about it? Why would he be so secretive? Thus, Cui Mengshan didn't believe it before coming, even snorting in disdain. But now, after seeing Li Shimin's eyes, He hurriedly rubbed his eyes and looked at the old man sitting next to him. The sense of danger in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Could it be the emperor and the retired emperor? But that wasn't right. If it was the emperor and the retired emperor, how could they not step forward after he had said such harsh words? Moreover, where was the crown prince? Wasn't it said that this was something the crown prince came up with? Where was the crown prince? This feeling only lasted for a moment. Cui Mengshan took a deep breath, clasped his fists, and then sat down on Ho Junji's seat. Ho Junji chuckled, but no one knew what he was laughing about. And Ho Junji had long since wanted to sit next to Li Yuan. This made him extremely uncomfortable, as if there was a dagger on his back. But now it was fine. Since someone had taken the initiative to stir up trouble, he would let that old fellow do as he pleased. Let's see if the emperor and the retired emperor wouldn't kill him after this. Cui Mengshan was also nervous. But this was exactly what he wanted. If his guess was true, then he would expose the identities of the emperor and the retired emperor in front of everyone today. With this as a threat, he was not afraid of what the emperor and the retired emperor would do. If it wasn't what he was thinking, he would have exposed the lies about White Deer College. In short, he had Zhang Feng under his thumb today. Once the academy was opened, it would be a disaster for the Shandong landowning households. Originally, the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan School were the places that they, Guanlong, and the 5 surnames and 7 clans had all tacitly agreed upon. But after this kid appeared, everything changed. From the beginning of the Locust Plague, when Shandong opposed the emperor's unbridled aid to the Longyu Dao and ignored the disaster in Shandong, the emperor had already cleaned it up. From that time on, the emperor seemed to have intended to do so. He paid special attention to the Hongwen Guan School and the Imperial College. But unexpectedly, during the mid-autumn hunt, this bastard Zhang Feng had used some unknown method to bribe Guanlong's men. Then, as if they had gone crazy, these people used all the things that this kid had created in the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan School. This inevitably sounded the alarm for the Shandong landowning households. For Guanlong, their main business was business, so what happened to the 2 academies had nothing to do with them. But it was different for the 5 surnames and 7 clans and Shandong. Once this place was out of control, it would be troublesome in the future. Therefore, after discussing with the 4 great clans, he was willing to come out of the mountain and meet this kid. If this kid knew what was good for him, then so be it. But if he didn't, then, at this moment, Qian Wanli's shouts were heard in the square. Once again, the gymnastic exercises were performed in unison in the huge square. The 8th set of radio gymnastics is ready to begin. Stretching exercise. Following Qian Wanli's shouts, the sound of musical instruments suddenly rang out in the square. Following the sound of the musical instruments, the thousands of people in the square also began their morning exercises. Those who were invited, as well as the Confucian scholars from the Hongwen Guan Imperial College, although they had seen this before, looked at the situation in the White Deer College and their own students. It was simply too horrible to look at. But at this moment, while everyone was shaking their heads and praising the beauty of this morning exercise, and even Sun Simiao was nodding his head in agreement, Cui Mengshan's voice rang out again. What nonsense is this? The academy is not like other academies. This is just a trick for fun. How can this be considered the main topic of the academy? However, just as everyone was raging, Zhang Feng's voice slowly rang out beside them. May I know who this old man is? I remember that he wasn't within the scope of my invitation. Chapter 1223. Fengzi. The President Zhang. Brother He Xian. At this time, everyone noticed the arrival of Zhang Feng. At this time, Zhang Feng was dressed in a white Confucian robe. Under the white jade ancient character hairband, his hair fluttered slightly in the wind. On his handsome cheeks, at this time, under this outfit, he looked even more ethereal. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, Li Yuan and others greeted Zhang Feng first, as if Cui Mengshan did not exist at all. "Ha, kid, why are you only here now? Old man is still waiting to see your dance at the Mid-Autumn Festival last time." Zhang Feng cupped his fists at Li Yuan and smiled bitterly. Later, when this kid is done with this matter, it must have been arranged long ago. At that time, You can just watch your grandson's performance. The speaker did not mean it, but the listener had the heart. Li Yuan, basically everyone present knew. Although he hid his identity and even dressed up at this time, he could not help but be a little shocked when he heard this. After all, at the Mid-Autumn Festival last time, everyone did not realize that the Crown Prince was actually among them. After all, under the illumination of the light, plus the uniform, who could recognize it? But now it was different. It was broad daylight. And Zhang Feng said it out loud. In an instant, several people's faces changed slightly. Li Yuan heard the words and twitched the corner of his mouth. He always felt that Zhang Feng was scolding him, but he had no evidence, so he could only laugh and then sit down. At this time, Zhang Feng carefully looked at this Cui Mengshan. Cui Mengshan was also carefully looking at Zhang Feng. Seeing that Zhang Feng was looking at him at this time, he said leisurely, "You are Zhang Feng?" "Yes, but old sir, who are you?" Hearing this, Cui Mengshan slightly narrowed his eyes and said, "Old man, Cui Mengshan of the Cui family of Qinghe." "Cui family?" Zhang Feng pretended to be surprised and looked at Yu Shinan and said, "Teacher, is this Cui family very famous?" Hiss. At this moment, someone below the stage couldn't help but gasp. "My good girl. Is he famous? Holy shit. How did this brat ask that? Wasn't this a slap to his face?" Even Li Shimin and Li Yuan, as well as the old scholar and the others, wanted to see what exactly Zhang Feng wanted to do. "Ahem, Zhang Feng, this is Mr. Cui Mengshan, a great scholar from the Cui clan of Qinghe from Shandong province. This time, he should be here to discuss some academic problems with you. Since you're a guest, why don't you two find a place to discuss Taoism later? Right now, the auspicious time has already arrived. If we delay the auspicious time, it won't be good." Yu Shinan looked at the sun in the sky and hurriedly stepped forward to stop the fight. If this was allowed to develop, who knows what would happen today? Since the Cui family dared to come, they must have made sufficient preparations. Seeing this, Cui Mengshan also snorted coldly. Forget it. The first thing they wanted to do was to humiliate Confucius, who was an existence that no one dared to delay. At this time, although he was very angry, he could only suppress it. At this moment, not far away, Chu Suiliang slowly got up and stood in front of the statue of Confucius. He slowly placed the 3 sacrificial animals on the table and then said majestically and solemnly, "Open the altar. Students, return the salute." Hearing this, the more than 3,000 students standing in the square, as well as the people on the stage, respectfully tidied up their clothes and then respectfully walked toward the Confucius statue. Standing in front of the statue, everyone bowed 3 times in unison. At this time, Chu Suiliang waved his embroidered robe and said, "The ceremony is over. Rise." Zhang Feng, a Confucian disciple of Confucius, come forward. Salute. Zhang Feng was very disgusted with these vulgar salutes. But he had no choice. These were all necessary. And if these things were not done properly, he would directly offend all the students in the world. Zhang Feng did not dare to do so. This set of vulgar salutes took a full 2 hours. After 2 hours, Zhang Feng sat back in his original position in a daze. But before he sat down, Yu Shinan, who was next to him, kept kicking him. Zhang Feng was stunned. Yu Shinan looked forward and said with a smile on his face, "Speak." Zhang Feng was stunned. Then he came to his senses. What the F***ck is this? What should he say? What should he say? Why didn't anyone tell him in advance? But now was not the time to care about this. Zhang Feng forced himself to be alert and thought, isn't this a mobilization meeting? Although there is no script, who is he? He is a liberal arts student. After thinking about it, he instantly figured it out. He stood up and made a scholarly gesture. Then he said, "I am a merit order. Since the establishment of the school on Mount Shao, I command White Deer College. Jixia White Deer College follows the teachings of Old Man Kong and is known by the world for its unrestrained style of learning and its fair treatment of all students. It has been more than 2 months since the establishment of the college. This time, I respectfully invite Old Man Kong to join Mount Shao. I follow the vow that there is no end to learning and there is no distinction between nobility and lowliness. Today is the opening ceremony. Everyone can ask me anything. As long as it is academic, I will tell you everything. Hearing this, instantly, a Confucian scholar hurriedly asked, I am Zhou Yuan Mountain. May I ask Dean Zhang Feng, what is important and what is not? This question was very tricky. Zhang Feng could not help but take another look at that person. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others could not help but take another look at that person. This was obviously to make things difficult for Zhang Feng. If Zhang Feng did not answer well, he would die without a burial place. But, at this moment, Li Shimin suddenly found Zhang Feng's side face showing a warm smile again. The people are important, the country is second, and the ruler is the least important. Chapter 12:24. Buzz. This time, the whole place burst into an uproar. But at this time, Zhou Yuanshan asked again, President Zhang Feng, do you mean that the people are nobles and the monarch is belittled? That is to say, the emperor's status is lowly? Are you king here to cause trouble? What the hell, did Lao Tzu provoke you? Zhang Feng frowned slightly. These things were the words of Mencius and the 100 schools of thought that he had read in an ancient book about the struggle between Daoists. At that time, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if they talked about it on a normal day. But if they found out that the people were nobles, the meaning was different. Maybe Zhang Feng's head would fall to the ground today. The faces of Yu Shernan and the others also darkened. But Zhang Feng didn't think too much about it. Instead, he said with assurance, the so-called people are nobles and the monarch is not that the emperor's status is low. I wonder if this Confucian has ever been on a boat? Zhou Yuanshan nodded. Many times. Good, then I will ask again. May I ask if there is any difference between a boat and water? This boat and water, which one is more important? This time, Zhou Yuanshan couldn't help but be stunned. After thinking for a while, he said, the boat is heavy and the water is light. Zhang Feng asked again, how heavy is the boat? How light is the water? The boat is as heavy as 1,000 caddies, the water is as light as a feather. Good. Zhang Feng praised and said, it seems that you know. Then I will ask you again, between the monarch and the people, which one is more important? This time. Not to mention the person who asked the question. At this time, even Yu Shernan and the others were confused. Wasn't it obvious? However, only Li Shimin and Li Yuan couldn't help but look serious. They had heard Zhang Feng talk about this before, but at that time, they didn't think much about it. But now, after seeing Zhang Feng and that person argue, they couldn't help but have a different opinion. Zhang Feng asked again, if you say that the boat is heavy, then why is it floating on the water? You said that the water is light, then why is it able to support such a heavy ship without sinking? This time, all of the students present couldn't help but have a burning gaze. Immediately after, a series of buzzing sounds erupted. A thin layer of cold sweat suddenly appeared on Zhou Yuanshan's face. This question was too tricky. Who would be so bored as to do something like this? But now that Zhang Feng said this, everyone felt that it made sense when they thought about how the Tao Lord was more important than the people. However, no one could understand the meaning behind it. For the first time, Cui Mingshan's face showed a dignified expression. This question was very profound, and even he couldn't figure it out. He turned around and saw that except for the old man next to him and the person whom he feared to be the emperor, everyone's face showed a thoughtful expression. However, when he looked at the two people whom he suspected to be the emperor and the retired emperor, their eyes were very serious. The old man seemed to notice his gaze and tilted his head to look at him. Cui Mingshan hurriedly turned his head away and didn't dare to look at him. After a while, Zhou Yuanshan couldn't help but hurriedly bow and say, Dean, please enlighten us. Good. You're worth teaching. Zhang Feng nodded and said, the so-called distinction between weight and weight lies in the human heart. If you think it's heavy, it's heavy. If you think it's light, it's light. Everything is there and doesn't move. But when you look at it, it will appear in your eyes. This is the so-called truth and I call it physics. Besides, the boat is equivalent to the emperor and the Tang dynasty. And the water can be regarded as the people, thousands of students, and thousands of soldiers guarding the border. Wow! In an instant, everyone couldn't help but burst into a roar. What was Zhang Feng talking about? This was the Great Way. But at this time, Zhang Feng said again, the meaning of this sentence is that the water can carry the boat and also sink it. Buzz. This time, even Yu Shernan, the old Xiuzai, and the others were moved. Even Li Shimin stood up excitedly. These words, when he heard them before, felt a little familiar, but now, it seemed to make some sense. But now, after Zhang Feng explained it in detail from beginning to end, Li Shimin, Li Yuan, and even Yu Shernan and the others present also had a deeper understanding. This kid was talking about the importance of the people in a different way. He compared the people to the water and the country to the boat. The water can carry the boat and also sink it. This was such a simple truth. Why didn't they think about it before? Zhang Feng actually didn't mean to target anyone, nor did he have any idea to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat he knew so much. To be able to rack his brains and say it out, that was already the best he could do. Where would he have the time to study these things? Every day, this and that, he was so busy that he couldn't get away. At this time, he didn't care whether the people understood or not. It was best if they could be confused. Seeing that many people wanted to ask questions, Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, I know that everyone has a lot to say, but this matter can only be understood and not explained in words. In fact, everyone has their own answer in their heart. What is the water? It is all things. What is the boat? It is also all things. So all things should have their own track. You can understand it by yourself. When everyone heard this, the corners of their mouths twitched. What kind of logic was this? They couldn't even ask. Chapter 12:25. However, at this moment, Cui Mengshan stood up and said, Old man has a question. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. Zhang Feng was waiting for this old man to ask, so he made a gesture of invitation. Cui Mengshan asked, May I ask what is the key to the world that is plagued by endless wars? This was blatantly stirring up trouble. Wasn't he trying to set a trap for Lao Tzu by saying that the emperor was not benevolent? Li Shimin and the others' eyes also changed slightly. For a long time, the people in Shandong had thought that he was a soldier and did not have the temperament of a scholar. They even criticized some of the things he had promulgated. Now, he was going to say this in public? Did he really think that the emperor had no temper? However, at this moment, Zhang Feng's voice slowly sounded. Looking at the overall situation of the world, the Tang dynasty is the most peaceful and healthy. Although it has experienced ups and downs, it is still thriving. This is because the current emperor is benevolent and carries out Zhou rights. Looking at the world, the barbarians like Tubo and Tuyuhun Turks do not follow Zhou rights and do not carry out benevolent governance. They are the key to the country. Of these, the Turks are the most important. All of you should be well aware of the harm these countries have inflicted on the people living on the borders of the Great Tang over the years. His Majesty has been benevolent, and he has laid out the fields. The country is a sage monarch, a good minister, and a benevolent government. In a short time, he has quelled the plague of locusts and swept away the famine. Haha. Cui Mengshan laughed and said, The rise and fall of the country, President Zhang sends the new and the old to the emperor. This is really the rule of man. Zhang Feng sneered, Man rules by virtue. At least he is better than old man Cui's ruling by politics. Hearing this, Cui Mengshan was angry. One of the Buddha's sleeves swept his gaze around before glaring at Zhang Feng. This old man is telling you the truth. Techniques are the study of legalism, not politics. Zhang Feng also sneered. Old man, you want to fight with Lao Tzu? You're still too inexperienced. Such legalism is the study of troubled times. We follow the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. What we learn and ask is the way of governing the world with benevolence and righteousness. The so-called benevolent governance is what we are doing now. Generally speaking, our college's aspiration is to spread the concept of benevolent governance. This time, everyone was in an uproar. That makes sense. President Zhang's words are really amazing. Our Tang dynasty's policy of benevolence is the reason why we have such a prosperous era. Tubo, Jinla, and Tuyuhun are willing to become vassal states of our Tang dynasty. Throughout the history of the Qin Emperor and the Han Emperor, only our emperor's benevolence can bring about such a peaceful era. Hearing the student's words, Cui Mingshan's expression changed again. Although he knew about these things, what did this have to do with Zhang Feng? Nonsense. Then, Cui Mingshan shouted angrily, "Nonsense! President Zhang's words are simply nonsense." Zhang Feng's face darkened. What this humble one said is reasonable. What I said is obvious to the common people of the world. Could it be that according to the words of your Shandong landowning clans, what this humble one said is wrong? Your Excellency has no reason to criticize it. Could it be that you think that what the students of the world see and hear is false? Are you saying that it's not as good as the Cui families? Or do you mean that whatever your Cui family says is the truth? Isn't this the truth? Zhang Feng pointed at Yu Shinan and the others below the stage and said, "Everyone, you've all seen it today. I'm praying to the heavens, praying for the benevolent governance of Confucius and Mencius, but I'm being criticized by the nobles of Shandong for no reason." Old man Cui Mingshan, what do you mean? At this moment, Cui Mingshan's expression suddenly changed. Seeing the Confucian's expressions gradually change, he couldn't help but hurriedly explain, "There are 3 reasons why old man's words are nonsense. All schools of thought in the world have branches, but during the spring and autumn period, although Confucianism, Moism, and legalism had merged into one, and Moism was weak, this has always been the same. However, you've taken this out of context, using techniques as the basis for legalism. This is the first reason. Although the 3 schools of legalism have always had their differences, their roots are the same. Since they've all agreed on the legal system as the foundation, they'll focus on implementing it. However, you've ignored the foundation of legalism, attacking one point and not the other. This is the second reason. Legalism's techniques are based on the foundation of law. They focus on cleansing the government, strengthening the investigation of officials, and manipulating politics. There's a world of difference, but you've intentionally erased its foundation. Your judgment is extremely rash. This is the third reason. Shut up. When Cui Mingshan finished speaking, Li Shimin indifferently said, "Then let me ask you, who are you? Which school of legalism is it?" This time, Li Shimin was truly enraged. Why did such a thing come out of the opening ceremony to stir up trouble? Although it was fine to discuss the Tao, it was the Shandong landowning household that didn't know what was good for them. When Yu Shinan heard this, he stood up and said, "Dare I ask, Brother Cui, your Shandong landowning household's original intention is to pass down the Confucian Tao. Have you also been researching the legalism school of thought? Furthermore, the old man and the others have been on the mountain for more than a month. What they've seen and heard, as well as what White Deer College has done, is there anything wrong with it?" Zhang Feng finally let out a sigh of relief. Son of a bitch. In this aspect, he really couldn't win against this damned old man. If not for Lao Li and Yu Shinan continuing the conversation, he really wouldn't know what to say. However, when Yu Shinan said this, Zhang Feng instantly knew what to say next. He interrupted Yu Shinan and said, "Dare I ask, what is the foundation of the Shandong landowning household? Are you not adhering to the teachings of Old Man Kong, but are you specifically speaking without thinking? If everyone was like that tyrannical government, how could there still be peace in this world? You can go and take a look at my White Deer College. When you're in Chang'an, you can ask around. We're always pushing the new and getting rid of the old, but we're mostly teaching and educating people. We're not talking about the Tao of the world anymore. Instead, we're doing things. When I gave up my family's fortune to save the victims of famine, have I ever done it for myself? I, Zhang Feng, made white paper, braised meat, and beer. Which one of them didn't benefit the country and its people?" This time, Cui Mingshan's expression changed. He was speechless. Zhang Feng took the opportunity to step forward and said, "I, Zhang Feng, have never been as good as any of you. However, in terms of conduct, in terms of standards, I, Zhang Feng, believe that your Shandong landowning household is nothing compared to me." Chapter 12:26. All the students and Confucians were in an uproar. What they had learned, what they had seen and heard all day long, which one of them was not the way of governing the world. Everyone wanted to use what they had learned to change this dynasty, to be able to become a scholar of their own in this era, to be able to bring happiness to the common people was their dream. Just now, Zhang Feng and Cui Mingshan's discussion. They could not help but open a door for everyone. It had even decided the outcome of the Dao debate. At this moment, Cui Mingshan listened to the noise and the questioning eyes. He could not help but taste blood in his mouth. A trace of blood hung on the corner of his mouth. When Zhang Feng saw this, he smiled slightly and moved closer to Cui Mingshan, saying, Zhang Feng would like to give Shandong another piece of advice. The way of governing the world is no longer empty talk, but practice. Whether it is the rule of law or the rule of men, who can make the people rich, no longer live a bitter life, no longer receive unequal treatment, and make the Tang dynasty prosper day by day, become a powerful country, and enrich the people. This is the right way. Otherwise, it is just empty talk and will affect the world. Just like the war in the surrounding area. Can Shandong give a reasonable solution? Could it be that you can only use your impeccable looks to preach and discuss Tao with those barbarians? Or do you want to influence them? If that's the case, then I, Zhang Feng, dare to say that in less than 10 years, your ideas will definitely be abandoned by the general trend. The days are moving forward, and the steps are moving forward. We have to set our sights further. Don't come to the research area with ancient books and research every day. It's not wrong to abide by the rules, but what are we? We are educators. Our vision must be longer than anyone else's. Only in this way can we educate the next generation of people who are more outstanding than us. Only in this way can all the people of the Tang dynasty really stand tall and be respected by the world. People are kind by nature, just like that dog. If the person he follows is kind, then he can guard your house and protect your life. But if he follows an evil person, then he's a demon by your side. Man is born good. You don't need me to tell you these things again, do you? Puff! In an instant, Cui Mingshan couldn't hold it in any longer. He spat out a mouthful of blood, reflecting sparkling and translucent light in the sun. At this time, everyone in the square widened their eyes and looked at Zhang Feng in horror. Zhang Feng ignored the unconscious Cui Mingshan. Instead, he walked over to the statue of Confucius and bowed 3 times. Sun Simiao called over 2 working students and hurriedly carried Cui Mingshan away. At this moment, Zhang Feng said loudly again, and I, Zhang Feng's academy, don't care about factions. Here, there is only the righteous path. At this moment, the Confucians could no longer sit still. One after another, they asked, Dare I ask Master Zhang, you said that people's hearts are good by nature, but if they are all good, then why do we need laws? Yeah. The distinction between good and evil is not easy to distinguish. Master Zhang, please enlighten us. In an instant, all the Confucians bowed down to Zhang Feng. At this moment, everyone really recognized Zhang Feng's identity as a great Confucian. Li Shimin and the others also looked at Zhang Feng with some horror. They thought that Zhang Feng would be in big trouble this time, but now it seemed that he didn't need to do anything. At this time, he and Li Yuan looked at each other, and the two looked at each other and laughed. Yu Shernan patted the old scholar's shoulder and said with emotion, Brother Zihuai, did you teach Fengzi all this? The old scholar said with a dignified expression, Didn't you teach him this? At this time, several people's expressions were sluggish. They glanced at Zhang Feng and then looked at each other, and then burst out with gratified expressions. Let's watch the show and see what else this kid knows. Yes, haha, I really didn't know that this kid had to be squeezed. If you don't squeeze, you'll never know that this kid knows so much. At this time, Zhang Feng's voice interrupted the whispered conversation of several people. Seeing that the situation was under control, Zhang Feng also restored the feeling that everything was under control. He paced slowly and said, Evil. Because of human nature, there is a legal system. People in the world are born for profit, so there is a struggle for wealth and land. Because of greed, there are bandits and violent killings. Because of extravagant hopes, there are sensual pleasures. The evil of human nature must be corrected according to the law. Using the law to guard against evil desires, using the law to guide human nature can be good and orderly. At this point, Zhang Feng's voice paused and said, "Many people may ask, why did I say that human nature is good, but now I say that human nature is evil? In fact, this is the same as the principle of water and boat. Good and evil are all between a person's thoughts. If you have desires, then there will naturally be disasters and so on in the world. My academy can't make people turn to good and abandon evil, but it can make people understand what is evil and what is good." Zhang Feng spent a lot of effort to explain the difference between good and evil. While he was at it, he also praised White Deer College and Chang'an University. The group of students, as well as the Confucian scholars who went up the mountain, were completely bewitched. At this time, Zhang Feng waved at Guzi and Zhuzi. The two of them were dressed in brand new boy outfits. They served Zhang Feng tea and cigarettes. After drinking a pot of tea in one gulp, Zhang Feng took a big puff of the cigarette and sighed secretly. Awesome. So, these Confucian scholars are really good at bragging. Chapter 12:27. Zhang Feng felt good. All the students present were in trouble. The reputation of the academy was already quite big, and everyone wanted to see Zhang Feng's Dao discussion. However, who would have thought that such a big thing would happen in this round? Who could take it? Who could stay calm? However, at this moment, while everyone was still in a state of shock, Zhang Feng actually slipped away. This was out of everyone's expectations. What time was this? This was the opening of the academy. How could Zhang Feng slip away? However, those who knew Zhang Feng well weren't surprised. This was what this kid liked to do. He slipped away after showing off. After 15 minutes after Zhang Feng left, the people present realized that Zhang Feng wasn't present. They all clamored for Zhang Feng to take his turn again. Yu Shernan stood up with a smile on his face. Everyone! Today is the opening of White Deer College. The banquet is ready. Everyone, why don't you follow the old man to the cafeteria? If you have anything to discuss, we can talk about it later. Yu Shernan's status was there for all to see. Now that he had spoken, who would dare to defy him? Not only that, it was rumored that the architecture of the White Deer Institute was unique, and the canteen was even more majestic and magnificent compared to the imperial kitchens in the imperial palace. It was already considered extremely lucky for them to be able to attend the Dao discussion today. But now that they heard about it, they decided to pay a visit. When Qian Wanli saw that the Confucian scholars and Lao Li had left, he walked up to the stage and bowed. Everyone, today I will lead you on a tour of White Deer College. Please follow the students closely. On the other side. When Zhang Feng walked out of the school building, he was deflated. He rolled and crawled back to his room. The moment he entered, he gulped down a pot of herbal tea. Seeing this, the two girls were dumbfounded. Although the two women hadn't been there just now, they had watched the discussion between Zhang Feng and Cui Mengshan from afar. At this moment, looking at Zhang Feng again, he was like a completely different person compared to his previous heroic self. Jingshu couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Prince Zhang, what's wrong? Didn't you just see Prince Zhang showing off his invincible might? Zhang Feng waved his hand and stared at Jingshu speechlessly. Don't mention it. How much ink do I have? If I stay here any longer, I'll probably be exposed. The two women were a little puzzled. Zhang Feng didn't want to explain. He waved his hand and said, Wait, no matter who comes, say that I'm holding a book. No, Feng Zi, Mr. Bosher invites you in. Just when Zhang Feng wanted to hide, Li Qingqian's voice sounded outside the door. Seeing this, Zhang Feng knew that he couldn't hide anymore. He had to open the door listlessly and follow Li Qingqian to the villa of the four great Confucian scholars. The villas were all together. Zhang Feng's villa was basically in a row with the four great Confucian scholars and Li Shimin, so he didn't have to worry about bumping into those Confucian scholars as soon as he went out. When Zhang Feng entered the door, in the spacious living room, there were 3 modern wooden sofas. Li Shimin, old scholar Li Yuan, and others were all sitting upright. Seeing Zhang Feng come, they all looked at Zhang Feng with a faint smile. Zhang Feng felt uncomfortable all over. Well, don't look at me like this. It makes me uncomfortable. Zhang Feng sat on the empty seat next to the old scholar and asked, "Why is it so troublesome to open the mountain gate?" Troublesome? Li Shimin laughed and said, "Actually, it's not troublesome at all. Who asked you to be so ostentatious before? Now everyone knows about it." Zhang Feng was speechless. If he hadn't flipped through this kind of book by chance before, and if he hadn't been learning about the 100 schools of philosophers' debate before he transmigrated, he would have been embarrassed today. "Let's not talk about this anymore," Yu Shernan said with a smile. "After what you did today, I'm sure that in less than 3 days, there will be more people coming to visit you. Just wait and feel uncomfortable." But this is also a good thing. Zhang Feng was speechless. What kind of good thing was this? Who had nothing better to do than do this all day? He was just a paper tiger. He could brag but, sigh. Poor old bones like us. We've just received news that all the Confucians that ascended the mountain today have been inspired by you and are preparing to join White Deer Academy once more. We've just done a rough estimate, and I'm afraid there won't be 1,000 people this time. There should be around 800. So many? Zhang Feng was shocked. But then, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and went to Yu Shernan and the others. He said with a smile, "Teacher, this is an opportunity." Yu Shernan rolled his eyes. "What opportunity?" "It's time to expand the teaching staff of our college." After Zhang Feng finished speaking, Yu Shernan and the others' eyes lit up. That's right. Whether it was Chang'an University or White Deer College, there was a serious imbalance in the teaching staff. Even with Ma Zhou and the others joining, they couldn't handle it in a day. However, although most of these Confucian scholars were mediocre, there were some who were outstanding. This way. It was really a good idea. At the thought of this, Li Shimin couldn't take it anymore. Seeing that they were discussing, he waved his hand and said, "Gizi, immediately spread the news that Zhang Feng said that he's going to recruit a few teachers for White Deer College and Chang'an University." Chapter 12:28. Emperor Yang of Sui's sword finally lay in Zhang Feng's arms. After yesterday's opening ceremony, Li Shimin reluctantly gave it to Zhang Feng. At this point, Zhang Feng had been hiding in a gentle place, unwilling to show himself. The 4 great scholars were busy handling the matters on and off the mountain. Although they had some complaints, looking at the mountainous pile of congratulatory gifts, the newly recruited students, and the teachers, their faces were full of smiles. The matters of White Deer College had been settled. On the first day, he was busy inviting everyone to tour the mountain, tour the teaching methods, and so on. At night, he hosted the evening activities. Zhang Feng was coaxed by Li Chengqian and the others to come out. Today, it was dusk time. Only then did the noise on the mountains slowly dissipate. Li Yuan and Li Shimin were furious because of Cui Mingshan's matter. On the first day, they left the mountain early, accompanied by Li Chengqian and the others. Zhang Feng didn't know why they were in such a hurry. However, after Yu Shernan got drunk, Zhang Feng vaguely heard that Shandong was going to be in trouble. However, this didn't concern Zhang Feng. He had always dealt with whatever came his way. At this moment, Zhang Feng sat on the balcony, looking at the waterfall under the setting sun. He closed his eyes and dozed off. Jing Shu was gently playing the guzheng beside him. Zhang Yuyao was also looking at Zhang Feng. No one knew what she was thinking. However, she also took over the glorious mission of Guzi and Zhuzi. At this moment, she tirelessly massaged Zhang Feng's shoulders. However, such a good thing didn't let Zhang Feng enjoy it for long. At this moment, a burst of noise forced Zhang Feng to stand up. "Who are you? This is the Villa District. You can't enter without an identity card." "I am Arkanon. Can I trouble you to inform the dean that there is a matter at the forging workshop?" "Forging workshop? Are you from that workshop?" The group of veterans had already been formed into a security team by Zhang Feng. Basically, Chen Tinyu and the others were in charge of this matter. However, ever since these veterans followed Zhang Feng, they refused to go anywhere else no matter what. They only stood guard at the entrance of Zhang Feng's villa, guarding the door for him. They said that the old village chief and cripple Wang had looked for them and personally instructed them not to care about anything else but Zhang Feng's safety. Now, even if Zhang Feng didn't like these oversized lights, he couldn't do anything about it. At this moment, Zhang Feng heard the sound downstairs. He slowly got up and leaned against the balcony to take a look. It really was Arcanon, who was dressed in gray. "Wait, I'm coming down now." Zhang Feng didn't dare to let him in. Even though he had ordered these people to bathe every day, the smell on his body was still enough to kill a cow. Zhang Feng went downstairs and asked at the entrance of the villa, "What's wrong?" "There's no more iron." Arcanon sighed. Zhang Feng thought to himself, "Just as I thought. There wasn't enough iron to begin with." The forging workshop had been using the only iron they had. However, Zhang Feng didn't expect that there would be no more iron today. Then, how much iron is there left on the mountain? There's still about 3 days' worth of iron left. However, this morning, that man said that he could get some iron from the shipyard. It should be enough to last for a while. Zhang Feng rubbed his forehead and waved his hand. "I know. Don't tell anyone about this. Do you understand?" "I understand." After all, Arcanon was once an all-powerful figure in the Western region. He was more astute than anyone else in some matters. At this moment, seeing that Zhang Feng was about to send him off, he hurriedly whispered, "The gun is basically done. Do you want to take a look?" "It's done?" Zhang Feng was shocked. "This is a good thing." He waved his hand and said, "Lead the way." If this thing was really done, it would be easy to handle. He could just take the gun and let Gao Can and the other uncouth fellows form a special force. They could directly kill their way into the hinterland of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. How good would that be? They could directly tear those fellows apart. This was a big plan against the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Therefore, when he heard that the gun was done, how could Zhang Feng sit still? This thing was where his confidence came from. It was better for him to have it than others. Once it was done, he could make himself a self-defense weapon. No matter how big the world was, he could go anywhere. The forging workshop was not far away. Zhang Feng and Arcanon went from the waterfall to the crowded area of the academy. However, it still took them about 2 hours. When the sky was dark, the two finally arrived at the forging workshop. In the cave, Mokido and the others had already stopped working. At this moment, the temperature in the cave had dropped a lot. Everyone sat casually by the walls of the cave, but their eyes were fixed on a wooden table in the middle of the cave. On the large wooden table, there were piles of parts of a type of gun that they had learned from Zhang Feng during this period of time. Beside the wooden table, there were dozens of oil lamps, which lit up the cave as if it was daytime. At this moment, when the two of them entered the cave, everyone hurriedly stood up and looked at Zhang Feng excitedly. Chapter 12:29. The next morning, on the cement road at the foot of Mount Xiaoli, a team of dozens of people was driving more than a dozen carriages to Mount Xiaoli slowly. The carriages emitted a nauseating smell along the way. Niu Jinda was sitting on the back of the horse at this time. He was weak and dizzy as if he was drunk. The people behind him were even worse off. Many of them were lying on the carriages like dead dogs. Their faces were ashen. Originally, Niu Jinda had planned to come back when Zhang Feng opened the hospital yesterday, but he didn't know what had happened. Since that night, his team had felt that something was wrong, so he didn't know why. At first, the team basically had abdominal pain and vomiting. Everyone thought they had eaten too much game. But since yesterday morning, even Niu Jinda, who was as strong as a bull, was exhausted. He had diarrhea more than a dozen times in a day. His intestines were almost out. He didn't dare to go to Chang'an city. It was shameful. As for the military camp, Niu Jinda also ignored it. Right now, the most important task was to throw these plague god iron ores to Zhang Feng, and then let that brat show them what the hell was going on. In the morning, the market at the foot of Mount Xiaoli was already noisy. And the patrolling soldiers, after seeing the appearance of Niu Jinda and others, almost thought they had encountered some bandits. They didn't dare to be careless. When they hurriedly spread the news, they also took over the people who were escorting the carriages. They even hurriedly carried them to the mountain with stretchers made of bamboo and clothes. Niu Jinda felt very ashamed. He covered his face with his hands all the way. No matter how others pointed at him, he didn't dare to say anything. How shameful! Not until they entered Zhang Feng's villa and heard Zhang Feng's voice did Niu Jinda look at the villa's yard through his fingers. After seeing only his people and Zhang Feng were there, he hurriedly grabbed Zhang Feng's hand and said with a trembling voice, "Fengzi, help." Zhang Feng's face darkened. "Old Niu, what's wrong with you? Aren't you fine in Chang'an?" When Old Bull heard this, he instantly burst into tears. She immediately pulled Zhang Feng aside and complained tearfully. Finally, Zhang Feng understood the ins and outs of the matter. Niu Jinda had always wanted to repay Zhang Feng for saving his life, so he immediately went to look for ores. However, none of them had seen what the iron in the picture looked like. They only felt that the two things seemed to be very similar. In the end, they dug it out and brought it back. However, this thing seemed to be cursed. At this time, after Niu Jinda finished speaking, he said with lingering fear, "Fengzi, I advise you, that thing can't be touched. If you have nothing to do, don't touch that thing." The more Zhang Feng listened, the more interested he became. This thing seemed to be, that was something. "Old cow, don't tell me that your diarrhea isn't because you ate something bad?" "Motherf asterisk cur, I always eat like this and nothing has ever happened. If I had diarrhea, I would have recovered long ago. How could I have diarrhea like this? This is definitely caused by that pile of rotten stones." Niu Jinda swore like a curse. Even Niu Jinda's family had confirmed this point. Involuntarily, Zhang Feng's interest was piqued. This thing was definitely not an iron ore. Anything that carried radiation was generally not a good thing. They were definitely poisoned by radiation. If this thing was brought to the academy, it would be a big problem. However, just when Zhang Feng wanted to hurry to see the ores, Niu Jinda grabbed Zhang Feng and asked again, "Fengzi, let me ask you something. Don't lie to me." Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "Look at the situation now. I'll go find Dr. Sun Simiao to take a look at you. I'll also take a look at the pile of stones you brought back. If it's really like what I think it is, then it'll be a big problem." However, Niu Jinda didn't listen at all. Instead, he asked, "Let me ask you, old you and the others who went to look for ores, have they returned?" No, you're the fastest. Come on." While speaking, Zhang Feng hurriedly ran away. Only Niu Jinda was left laughing crazily. "Ha, Lao Tzu knew it. Lao Tzu knew that I'm the fastest." While Niu Jinda was proudly showing off, Sun Simiao entered Zhang Feng's villa with a serious face with Yu Shinan and the others. Seeing the courtyard full of injured people, his face couldn't help but sink. He didn't have time to talk and hurried to Niu Jinda's side. He asked about the cause of the matter and checked his pulse. However, slowly, Sun Simiao's face changed. He hurriedly shouted, "Someone, carry them to a place where there's no one. Quickly find someone to disinfect the dean's villa. Everyone who came in contact with them, immediately come to find the old man." What was going on? In an instant, Niu Jinda was dumbfounded. Niu Jinda's subordinates were dumbfounded. The onlookers were also dumbfounded. What was going on? Why did the situation suddenly change? Could it be, was this a plague? Chapter 12:30. As soon as Zhang Feng left the dormitory, he hurried to the workshop. He was worried that this thing might be radioactive. If that was the case, the craftsmen that he had painstakingly trained would all be gone. When he arrived at the workshop's entrance was already surrounded by people from the workshop and the craftsmen from the mountain. When Zhang Feng saw this, he hurriedly shouted, "Get out of the way! Don't come near!" Everyone was stunned. But who was Zhang Feng? He was the dean. Everyone hurriedly made way for the big carriages. After all, everyone saw the miserable state that Niu Jinda and the others were in when they arrived. At this moment, they recalled that Niu Jinda had just gone to see the dean, and now, the dean was rushing here in a hurry. Something must have happened. Before they got close to the carriage, Zhang Feng could smell a strange stench. It was as if a dung pool that had been covered for more than 10 years had suddenly been opened. He was a little suspicious, but he was even more certain that this thing was definitely not an iron ore. Ordinary ores would not emit such a smell, and people who came into contact with it would not have any symptoms. Zhang Feng felt guilty. He wanted to find a mouth cover, but there was no such thing in this era. He could only muster up his courage, cover his mouth and nose, and carefully approach the carriage with the torch. Arcanon and Mokido blocked Zhang Feng and asked in surprise, "Dean, we have seen the thing in the carriage. It is indeed not an iron ore. Although the color is similar, we dare to bet that this thing is definitely not an iron ore." What? Zhang Feng was shocked again. He wanted to go forward, but Arcanon snatched the torch from Zhang Feng's hand. Zhang Feng glared at him and he laughed. "Dean, although I have not seen this thing before, there is definitely a problem. Don't worry, I am an old man. I can still handle this kind of thing. You don't need Jiang Zun." When Zhang Feng heard this, he glared at him. "What do you know? This thing might have radiation. Old Cow and the rest have fallen ill after coming into contact with this thing. I have a solution." Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, Arcanon laughed and said, "Then I'll have to go." Mokido also tried to persuade Zhang Feng, "Dean, you should let him go. When this kid was in Persia, he saw a stone fall from the sky and killed the entire Persian royal family in one night. At that time, he was the one who went, but didn't he come out unscathed? Don't worry, let him take a look first." The more he listened, the more Zhang Feng felt that this ore was definitely not ordinary. But Alkinen didn't care. He tore off a piece of cloth from his robe and peed on the spot. After drenching the cloth, he covered his mouth and nose and stepped forward. This time, Mokido said softly, "You're the dean now. Your status is noble. You shouldn't use urine to cover your mouth." Zhang Feng came to a sudden realization. But in his heart, he was anxious. If this was a radioactive or, not to mention using urine to cover your mouth and nose, even if you were soaked in urine, it wouldn't be a problem. After all, Arcanon had decades of experience in the field of blacksmithing, and he had seen countless strange things in his hands. This was the first time he had seen something that could kill you. It was as light as a feather in his hand, like pieces of old yeast that had been stored for decades. When it entered his mouth, it actually had a similar taste to old yeast. This time, Arcanon couldn't help but be a little surprised. He had seen many rare ores, but this was the first time he had seen something like this. How could he have known that this thing would be like this? He curiously picked up a piece of ore and knocked it lightly on a slightly bigger piece of ore. A piece of ore actually broke. What was this thing? This was definitely not an ore. As long as it was a person, this thing was definitely not an ore. Otherwise, how could it break with just a knock? At this time, Zhang Feng was also a little confused. "Arcanon, give me a small piece. I seem to remember what this thing is." Arcanon was still worried, but he couldn't persuade Zhang Feng. He could only take out a small piece of ore and pass it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng held the ore in his hand and looked at it carefully. He felt that this thing was very familiar, but he couldn't make sense of it. His heart skipped a beat. Zhang Feng placed the ore on the cement road and found a relatively flat rock. Then he carefully ground the ore into powder. The crowd was so frightened that they were worried that Zhang Feng might be poisoned, but they didn't dare to make a sound. Now that no one knew what this thing was, they could only look at it carefully. After all, the news that Zhang Feng was a miracle doctor had long spread. At this time, Zhang Feng picked up a little bit of the powder on the ground and carefully put it into his mouth. His face instantly changed. Sure enough, this thing tasted very similar to the septic tank he had just played with. He couldn't help but be ecstatic. "Ha, old Nyo, oh Nyo, you're rich." Chapter 12:31. Alkinen and the others did not understand. They hurried forward and asked curiously, "Dean, what is this?" "This is phosphor stone, also known as white phosphor stone. It is a kind of mineral that can greatly increase grain production." There was such a thing? They could not help but wonder. Alkinen, Mokido, and the others were shocked. This thing, stone powder, could increase grain production? But Zhang Feng was not interested in talking to them. He hurriedly said, "These stones are fine, but don't hide a piece in your arms. If you touch it for a long time, it will make you have diarrhea and vomit. If it is serious, you will die." Hearing that, Alkinen stepped back. But he did not understand what Zhang Feng meant. On the one hand, this thing could increase grain production, but on the other hand, it would make people die? What was this thing? Could the grain that was grown be eaten? But when they thought of Zhang Feng's magical things, they became indifferent again. Arcanon looked at Zhang Feng's torch that was getting further and further away in the darkness and sighed. The Tang Empire is really vast and rich in resources. We are now the people of the Tang dynasty, right? Mokido patted Alkinon's shoulder and asked. Then the two of them could not help but laugh. On the other side, when Zhang Feng returned to the dormitory area, he couldn't help but be shocked by this operation. Old Cow and the others, who were originally in the courtyard, were nowhere to be seen. At that moment, there was raging smoke inside and outside the courtyard. Upon closer inspection, it was actually the smell of lime powder, sulfur grass, and mugwort. And the old soldiers who were guarding the door of Zhang Feng's villa looked as if their parents had died. When they saw Zhang Feng come back, they quickly covered their mouths and noses as if they were going to die for a righteous cause. Without saying anything, they went up to Zhang Feng and dragged him down the mountain. Zhang Feng was really shocked by what he had done. Hey, why don't you guys fart for Lao Tzu? What happened? What's going on? You mother*****, speak up for Lao Tzu. If you don't speak up, do you believe that Lao Tzu will chop you up right now? Let go of Lao Tzu. *****. If you don't ****king let go of Lao Tzu, believe it or not, director, please don't shout anymore. This is Dr. Sun's order. He said that this thing is the god of plagues and that everyone has been infected by the plague. We're trying to get you to stay away from the plague. The leading veteran shouted in a hoarse voice, as if he had been choked by the smoke. At this moment, he said again, Dean, we have already sent the 2 deans' wives down the mountain. Now we will send you to the mountain gate. Please don't shout or you will cause panic. Plague? Send him down the mountain? Panic? What the ****ck is going on here? Let go of me. Where did this plague come from? Lao Tzu is a miracle doctor. I have already investigated. This is not a plague at all. Let go of me. Otherwise, if something happens to Lao Tzu and the rest, you guys will wait for Lao Tzu. Hearing this, the few men who were carrying Zhang Feng were stunned and stopped in their tracks. It's not a plague? Director, don't worry about this matter. We all heard that Lao Tzu brought more than 50 good brothers. Now, only a dozen of them have returned. Those 20 brothers all died inexplicably because of this, and they died right outside Chang'an city. When they entered the city, they didn't even dare to go through the main gate. They took a detour. They were all veterans. Naturally, they knew Niu Jinda. Moreover, some of Niu Jinda's subordinates also knew him. At this moment, looking at these old brothers who didn't die on the battlefield but died in such a sullen manner, and some of them were even waiting for death in so much pain, they couldn't help but feel a little sad. Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't win against them. He could only swear and swear. Think about it. Do you think I will lie to you? Lao Tzu is my brother. I can't just ignore him, right? Moreover, I am also a miracle doctor. You guys have seen me before. If I go now, they may still be saved. However, if I delay any longer, even if the gods come down to earth, they won't be able to save them. Hearing this, after weighing the pros and cons, they hurriedly carried Zhang Feng to the lime kiln at the mountain behind the waterfall. The miracle doctor was indeed a miracle doctor. At this time, he was actually able to think of this point. He was really decisive. However, this scared Niu Jinda and the others. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what would happen either. However, what awaited them was the scorching hot air in the air, which made them feel even more uncomfortable. But at this moment, just as Sun Simiao was about to give them a blood transplant according to Zhang Feng's method, Zhang Feng had already rushed over. As he walked, Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, "There's a mistake. Don't do it. It's okay. They're fine." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng. Niu Jinda struggled to get up from the pile of straw and shouted, "Brother, help." Chapter 12:32. Sun Simiao was a little suspicious, but he also believed in Zhang Feng's medical skills. He hurriedly told Zhang Feng what he had just found out. Zhang Feng couldn't help but interrupt Sun Simiao. He looked at the worried people and said, "Actually, this matter is indeed very serious, but it's definitely not a plague. It's definitely not some other problem. Fengzi, I say, don't just stand there and talk. You'd better see how to save me first. How about it? I'm about to die, and you're still here talking nonsense? Niu Jinda really didn't understand the situation. At this time, seeing that Zhang Feng was still in the mood, how could he lie down? If it wasn't for the fact that he had just been forced to drink a large basin of cow urine, he would have already come forward to strangle Zhang Fengshi's neck. It was also because of that basin of cow urine that he and his subordinates had a trace of strength. Seeing this, Sun Simiao hurriedly took out a piece of cloth stained with cow urine from the basin next to him and handed it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. I say, old master, what are you doing? Sun Simiao saw that Zhang Feng didn't know what to do. He could only point to the cloth under their noses and said, this thing is good for killing viruses and isolating the plague. Don't you know to use the alcohol I gave you before? That thing is precious. Zhang Feng was speechless. Okay, you don't have to do this thing. You don't feel embarrassed, but I feel uncomfortable. This disease is not contagious. Just wait and see. Now, Sun Simiao was even more confused. But still, he still chose to believe in Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng waved his hand and ordered people to carry everyone back to the house in the villa area. Now that Jing Shu and her daughter had gone down the mountain, the house was very big and ventilated. Such a problem was obviously phosphorus poisoning. If it was a big problem, it was indeed a big problem. But if it was a small problem, it was also a small problem. Sun Simiao asked worriedly, how are you going to save them now? Sun Simiao asked after they were all on the floor. Bring me a few jars of vinegar. Zhang Feng looked at Niu Jinda and said. When she said that, Niu Jinda's eyes widened. What's vinegar for? Here you go. Niu Jinda was about to go crazy. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhang Feng's expression was very cautious, he would have thought that this brat was messing with him. Most importantly, he had just drunk a large basin of cow urine. If he were to drink vinegar now, thinking about it, Niu Jinda felt like dying. Seeing this, Zhang Feng squatted beside Niu Jinda, lit a cigarette, and handed it to him, saying, Old Niu, you're awesome this time. Niu Jinda smoked silently and didn't want to talk to Zhang Feng. He thought that Zhang Feng was laughing at him. Zhang Feng also saw that Niu Jinda didn't believe him. He waved his hand and asked the 4 scholars and Sun Simiao, who were watching the situation inside, to sit down. Then he said, I really admire old Niu this time. Do you know what old Niu found this time? What? Several people asked in unison. Niu Jinda's bodyguard on the ground also opened his eyes wide at this time. Zhang Feng said slowly, it's phosphate or... Maybe you don't know what it is, but I know. What is the Tang dynasty lacking the most now? Niu, tell me. Food shortage. Niu Jinda blurted it out without thinking. Zhang Feng snapped his fingers and said, yes. Food. And now the autumn planting of this season is the key to whether the Tang dynasty will starve next year. And we all know that the food now is basically a few stones of grain per mu of land. But if we use the fertilizer made from the phosphate and cultivate the seeds, I believe that it won't be a problem to double the yield per mu of land. Hiss. What did you say? Are you sure you're not bragging? Zhang Feng boy, you can't lie about this kind of thing. You sure Nan and the others couldn't stay calm in an instant? Double the yield per mu of land? This was simply unthinkable. If someone else had said this, they would have definitely slapped that person. Food was the most important thing in the world. No one was willing to use food to brag. This was also a big taboo in the world. But this time, it was Zhang Feng who said it. How could they be shocked? But more people still felt that it was inconceivable. No matter how they thought about it, they felt that it was impossible. Who would have thought that this thing could be so useful that it could directly double the yield per mu of land? Wasn't this a joke? It couldn't help but be so shocking. Chu Suiliang paced in the room with a dignified face. After a while, he said, Fengzi, are you sure you're serious about what you said now? I'm serious. These things are absolutely true. Not only that, but the most important thing is that if the seeds are grown according to the method I said, I can guarantee that the yield will be doubled. Zhang Feng looked at Chu Suiliang with a smile and said, at least, according to the yield of wheat, if I improve the quality of the seeds, it won't be a problem to produce more than 20 stones per mu. And this is under the condition that the phosphate or fertilizer I said is not used. Once this fertilizer is used, the yield will be increased. Chapter 12:33. It was nighttime. Zhang Feng's villa was filled with the smell of vinegar. Throughout the night, Zhang Feng's bathroom was the most lively place. Basically, no one was idle. But as the night deepened, bursts of thunderous snoring came from the whole villa area. In such a dark night, the news that could change the fate of the Tang dynasty suddenly spread to the imperial palace. The next moment, Li Shimin couldn't sleep. That night, he called Wei Zheng and the others to discuss whether it was true or not. In Chang'an City, in Zhang Shan's mansion, the old Xiozai of Chang'an University, as well as Cheng Yaojin and the others, all knew that Niu Jinda was poisoned and the phosphate fertilizer. For a time, the whole Chang'an city was in turmoil. The next morning, before dawn, Li Shimin directly hung up the board. He didn't have to go to court today, and then hurried up the mountain. 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4. On the mountain, it was still gray at this time, but Qian Wanli had led the students on the mountain early in the morning and had been running around the mountain for a long time. On the mountain, some students, craftsmen, and handymen were busy preparing breakfast. When Li Shimin and a large group of people went up the mountain, Yushernan was doing morning exercises to stretch his muscles and bones. As soon as he saw Li Shimin, Yushernan knew what he was going to do. He hurriedly asked Li Shimin and the others to go to the side. "Mr. Bosher, did that guy tell you this in person last night?" Li Shimin couldn't wait to ask. Yushernan nodded. "Yes, that guy said it in person. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked someone to send you a letter overnight. I think now many people at the foot of the mountain know about it, right?" Li Shimin heard that and sighed softly. How could he not know about this matter? Because of the autumn planting, he had not slept well for many nights. When he heard about Zhang Feng last night, he did not sleep at all. That was the reason why he had come. At this time, hearing Yushernan's words, Li Shimin turned around and walked towards Zhang Feng's villa. Even Yushernan couldn't stop him. Upon entering Zhang Feng's courtyard, Li Shimin couldn't help but frown. That snoring sound was unbearable to look at. Seeing this, Yushernan asked the veteran at the door to go in and wake everyone up. After a series of tremors, it finally quieted down. At this time, Zhang Feng and Niu Jinda, who was holding the door, also came out of the room. Without waiting for Li Shimin to speak, Zhang Feng said, "Let's go somewhere else. Let's go to the cafeteria and eat while we talk." Zhang Feng knew that Lao Li would definitely be the first to come to him this morning. In addition, he had barely managed to fall asleep last night amidst the roars and howls. How could he be in the mood to stay in the room now? Even if he didn't die from the smelly feet, he would be tortured to death. As soon as the four of them sat down, a servant served a few bowls of porridge. After the servant left, Li Shimin hurriedly asked, but Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin first and said, "Bring us a plate of wheat. We'll cook now or prepare wheat for planting." The servant didn't know what was going on, but since Zhang Feng had spoken, the servant hurriedly brought up a few plates of grain seeds that were going to be planted in the fields. Zhang Feng pointed at the seeds and said, "You've all seen this before, right?" Li Shimin and the others all rolled their eyes. If they didn't recognize this thing, then what was it? Zhang Feng asked for a snub, but he didn't take it to heart. He took out a piece of phosphor stone from his pocket and placed it on the table. The moment he saw the phosphor stone, Niu Jinda's expression instinctively changed. This thing had caused the death of dozens of his brothers. It would be strange if his expression was good when he saw it now. Seeing this, Zhang Feng smiled and said, "This thing is called phosphor stone. It's a type of ore. Isn't this nonsense? Who doesn't know that this is an ore? Just say it. You said that this thing can really double the yield of seeds?" "Indeed. This thing has to do with agriculture. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Let me put it this way. The seeds are like the pigs that I made before. They need to be carefully cared for before they can produce high-quality piglets." Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin and said, "Lao Li, you know about the thing that Butcher Zheng at the foot of the mountain made, right?" Li Shimin was stunned. But when he thought of the new breed of pigs around Chang'an, he nodded and said, "Are you talking about the thing that Butcher Zheng made?" "Yes. Those pigs are all good breeds after being bred and screened. After 3 generations of pigs, the breed is basically excellent. Just like the wheat seeds now, they are basically scattered widely and the profits are small. What's the use of this? This is equivalent to a joke, isn't it?" It was such a metaphor. Li Shimin really understood. He knew about the matter of the pigs. And he knew a lot. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say this, he remembered that it seemed that he hadn't paid attention to this matter for a long time. Although this matter was very important, it was related to the livelihood of the people at this time. If this problem was not solved, it would be useless no matter how much money he was given, or even if he brought in the 5 families and 7 clans. Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but tremble. He grabbed Zhang Feng and said, "Fengzi, tell me, how do you plan to deal with this matter? Tell me Lao Li will pay for all the expenses of this matter." Chapter 12:34. All right. That's enough for me. But as you can see, the academy has just been settled, and there are many things that have yet to be done, not to mention the Academy of Science. Don't get too excited. Go to the fields and take a look first. This matter can't be rushed. I'll settle old Nyo's matter first. If old Nyo's matter isn't handled properly, it will really be fatal. Hearing this, Nyo Jinda's face changed. Li Shimin was still worried and asked, "Then tell me, can this matter be done in time for this year's autumn planting?" "Lao Li, don't worry. We still don't know what this so-called phosphor stone is used for. How about we talk about it after we figure it out? Besides, you've seen what happened on the mountain. This research Yu Shernan couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly tried to persuade Li Shimin. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "The Science and Technology Institute is easy. Isn't there a place for Chang'an University? We can bring all the students of Chang'an University to the mountain and do research at the foot of the mountain. Isn't that enough?" Zhang Feng's face stiffened when he heard this. "I think you, Lao Li, want to go to jail." Li Shimin was stunned when he heard this. "What's wrong? Look at old Ox and the others. How long has it been? How long has it been? In less than 3 days, more than 20 of our brothers have died. If you were to do research in Chang'an, you'd better think about the consequences." Li Shimin thought about it and his face changed instantly. If this was in Chang'an, then what do you think we should do with this thing? Li Shimin was also anxious. People were like this. When they didn't know about this matter, they could do everything step by step. But when they knew that it could increase their income, it would be strange if they could sit still. Li Shimin was like this. How could he wait at this time? He was so desperate for food that he was about to go crazy. However, he knew that in the current situation, more haste, less speed. In the end, Li Shimin could only sigh and sit down resentfully. "Feng Zi, do you think my illness can be cured?" Seeing that everything was settled, Nyo Jinda asked with a nervous expression. At this moment, his son was lying at home, and he was in such a state. Anyone who saw him would be anxious. Moreover, if this incident were to spread to the army, what kind of consequences would it cause? Li Shimin also saw this point, so he did not dwell on this matter. Zhang Feng didn't say anything. Instead, he put the walnut-sized phosphor stone on the table. Then, he took out a delicate dagger from his chest and carefully cut it into pieces. Then, he ground it into powder and used a piece of paper to carefully separate the residue. This time, only a trace of white powder was left on the paper. It also exuded a faint pungent smell. Li Shimin stared at this thing in a daze. Then, he looked at the thing that was comparable to fine salt with some doubts. Before he could ask, Zhang Feng said, "This thing is phosphor fertilizer. Once this fertilizer is used, it can be said that if your family of 5 has an acre of land, they can eat their fill without any worries and won't have to worry about their stomachs anymore. If you have a few hundred acres of land, Lao Li, do you know? As long as you use this thing, I can guarantee that basically, the medicinal herbs you grow will increase by more than half. In ancient times, the fields were very thin. Moreover, farmers used manure for a long time. Most of them basically didn't need any fertilizer, let alone other things. The harvest of the farmers was basically dependent on the heavens. So, how could the harvest be good? Those big families only had dozens or hundreds of mu of land, and some even relied on the slaves or workers hired by their families to work in the fields. How could they do a good job? It would be strange. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others wanted to take a closer look. However, when they saw Niu Jinda's miserable state, they shrank back. They anxiously scratched their ears and cheeks. Fengzi, tell me, can this thing be used just like this? Or is there any other use for this thing? By the way, if you want to make this thing, how long will it take to make it? Also about the seeds. Li Shimin couldn't wait. He asked. Zhang Feng rubbed his chin and thought for a moment before saying, at this rate, the wheat should be planted by next month at the latest, right? Then let's do it before next month. We still need to start looking for a place to build the phosphate fertilizer factory starting tomorrow. After all, you have seen the power of this thing. If it's placed in a crowded place, it definitely won't work. Moreover, I still need to study some things here. Otherwise, if this person goes in, he will definitely be played with in less than a day. So troublesome? Li Shimin was stunned. However, he made up his mind and said, this is not a problem. There are many prisoners on death row in the various prisons. When the time comes, I will go and get some people in. Just tell me when we can start. As for the location, I will think of a way. No. Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted Li Shimin and asked, Lao Li, can you even get a death row prisoner? Are you sure? Chapter 12:35. Cough, Lao Li I'm also very curious. Although your business is very big, getting someone out of the death row prison isn't a simple matter. Are you sure you have a way? Yu Shernan was scared out of his wits and hurriedly changed the topic. This time, Li Shimin finally came to his senses. Li Shimin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He had been so focused on talking about this that he really had forgotten about this matter. At this moment, seeing Zhang Feng staring at him curiously, Li Shimin's eyes flashed and he said, actually, this person can definitely be brought over. Think about it, don't we know Lord Zhang's son? Right now, we also have Duke Qin, Ho Junji, and Imperial Prince Li Shaogong. Moreover, this matter is beneficial to the country and the people. Think about it, would His Majesty not agree? Thinking about it this way, Zhang Feng finally came to a realization. That's right. The current emperor had just experienced the predicament of being surrounded by tens of thousands of starving people. If he heard about this matter now, wouldn't he go crazy with joy? Then wouldn't he have anything he wanted? If he wanted to be an official now, then, with this thought, Zhang Feng's heart began to heat up again. Right, it's still you, Lao Li, who understands me. Now that you mention it, I suddenly remember that this matter of ours isn't just a business. More importantly, this business of ours can also help His Majesty solve a huge problem. If that's the case, then don't you think that I, Zhang Feng, am going to strike it rich? Not only that, when the time comes, all of us will be able to become officials. Just thinking about it makes me happy, don't you think? Li Shimin, Niu Jinda, and Yu Shernan were all dumbfounded. They couldn't keep up with Zhang Feng's thoughts at all. After a while, they asked, You said that we can all become officials? That's right. Zhang Feng excitedly slapped his thigh and said, Think about it, this is the era of agriculture. Those who obtain food will obtain the hearts of the world. If we can get this thing out, then won't we be able to benefit the people? And not only that, not only can we bring honor to our families, we can also leave our names in history. Aren't you all excited? Li Shimin and the other two black lines, Yu Shernan, slowly clenched his fists. Seeing Zhang's greedy eyes, he couldn't help but reveal a trace of coldness. However, Zhang Feng still didn't notice it. He continued to talk. Think about it. Right now, you guys are in the business world. You can't be seen in public. But once you have an official position, you will be related to the word official. Then, us brothers will all be officials in the future. I've said it before, when I, Zhang Feng, become successful, I won't forget you old brothers. How about it, Lao Li, am I, Zhang Feng, a brother? Think about it, what kind of official position do you want after the emperor's edict comes down? The Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Agriculture, and so on. Boy, do you think old man is invisible? Just when Zhang Feng was thinking about what kind of official position he wanted in the future, Yu Shinan finally couldn't bear it anymore. Hearing this, Zhang Feng shrunk his neck. Only then did he remember that Mr. Bo Shi was still here. This time, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, who couldn't hold back his laughter, and Niu Jinda, who had a green face, and was dumbfounded. F***CK, you said you were brothers. You two idiots, give me a hint. This is great. Zhang Feng glared at Niu Jinda, who was trying hard to hold back his laughter. He wiped the bowl of porridge and poured it into his bowl. Can't even eat to shut your mouth? Is it as funny as me? Look, even Mr. Bo Shi is unhappy. I promise? Mr. Bo Shi, this boy? Niu Jinda wanted to quibble, but because his body was exhausted, he didn't have any strength at this time, so he could only laugh wildly. Zhang Feng was angry. He couldn't wait to smash the bowl of porridge in front of him on Niu Jinda's face. Yu Shinan sighed and said angrily, "We are all scholars. It's okay to talk about this in front of old man and the others, but once outsiders know what you said today, have you thought about the consequences? As the dean, your goal is to benefit the people and the students, but all you think about is fighting for power. If you really enter the imperial court, what will happen? In old man's opinion, you shouldn't go to the imperial court to cause trouble. You'd better stay in the academy and teach for the old man. When you learn not to fight for power, we'll talk about it again." As he spoke, Yu Shinan stormed off in a huff. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. Which part of my thinking is not for the country and the people? What part of my saying is wrong? Isn't it just a nominal official position? This is also for the convenience of doing things, isn't it? The more Zhang Feng thought about it, the more wronged he felt. He pointed at the direction where Yu Shinan left and asked, "Lao Li, look, what did I say wrong? This is a completely normal way of thinking, okay? I'm still a child." Enough. Chapter 12:36. Did I say something wrong? I'm only 20 years old this year. Am I still? Ahem. Li Shimin couldn't stand it anymore. He was embarrassed by Zhang Feng. In the Tang dynasty, at Zhang Feng's age he already had a lot of wives and concubines, and his children were already old enough to buy soy sauce. Now, you are telling me that you are still a child? Look at the things you have done. Which one of them was done by a child? Li Shimin was speechless. He narrowed his eyes and said, "Fengzi, let's not talk about this. This is a matter of the future. Only after the harvest next year will the emperor give a big reward. But now, you are just talking about it. You haven't prepared anything and you haven't done anything. Aren't you talking too much?" Originally, Li Shimin really wanted to reward Zhang Feng now, but Yu Shinan's words just now were actually for him. Now, Zhang Feng was like a thriving tree. If he was contaminated by the bad atmosphere in the imperial court too early, it would only be disadvantageous to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng's personality was frank, and he was extremely protective of the people around him. He was a man of principles, and he followed all of his preferences. He was fine as a brother, but once he entered the huge quagmire that was the imperial court, Li Shimin was very worried that in less than a month, Zhang Feng would be led astray. He knew that he was ashamed to face Zhang Feng, but this matter could only wait until Zhang Feng's wisdom and age were more mature, or until all the bad people were suppressed and entered the imperial court. At that time, with Zhang Feng's ability, Li Shimin believed that no one would dare to oppose Zhang Feng anymore. After all the food in Chang'an city was basically made by this kid. But this was not enough. At the very least, these things were not enough to capture the hearts of the cunning people in the imperial court. In the eyes of those cunning people, Zhang Feng was too easy to control. Li Shimin didn't want to see this happen to Zhang Feng. Most importantly, he didn't want to lose this brother so soon. "Fengzi, tell me about your Science and Technology Institute first. As for the phosphate fertilizer factory, I will settle the factory for you after I go down the mountain today. As for when you want to start, that's your business." Zhang Feng was silent for a moment, then he said, "It's easy to set up a place, but this thing requires knowledge of chemistry. Although Li Gan and the others have some knowledge of physics, you can see the current situation. At this time, How do you think I can set up a research institute? In terms of time, it's too late. Academy, also known as the physics laboratory. This thing was the core of White Deer College, so Zhang Feng didn't dare to do it casually. At the very least, he didn't dare to interfere with this matter when he was busy. He only dared to do it when things were not so busy. After all, this experiment was different from other places. At the very least, in terms of its functions, it was very different from the current teaching building. Although some things could be replaced by the empty classrooms now, but most of the physics experiments had radioactive effects. At the very least, the experiment on the radioactivity of the phosphate fertilizer and the high-speed extraction of phosphate rock required experiments. Right now, Zhang Feng was only at the initial stage of understanding these things. Basically, he only knew how to talk. After all, if it weren't for the credits, he wouldn't have gone back to the physics and chemistry classes. Lao Li, I'll think of a way to deal with this laboratory, but we can't be too hasty. As for the extraction of the phosphate fertilizer, I have the simplest method here. Zhang Feng muttered to himself for a while, then looked at Niu Jinda and said, Old Niu, how big is the phosphate rock you saw on Mount Longsho? Niu Jinda didn't even think about it. It's about the size of Mount Shao. It's everywhere. As for how deep it is, I don't know. But Feng Zi, are you sure this thing can be used? It can be used? Get rid of the question mark. Zhang Feng smiled faintly. Let me ask you, are the trees on the phosphate rock more abundant than other places? Also, there's a distance outside the phosphate rock mountain. Is there not a single blade of grass growing there? Hearing Zhang Feng's question, Niu Jinda couldn't help but think that Zhang Feng had been there before. Feng Zi, have you been there before? Zhang Feng shook his head and said, No, I haven't. Then how do you know so much about the situation there? Wasn't this nonsense? If he didn't know about this, then wouldn't he have studied for nothing all these years? However, he didn't dare to do this experiment on his own. When he was teaching Li Gan and the others, he could also review the old and learn new things. Otherwise, if he died, then he would really be done for. Moreover, as a liberal arts student, he knew these things, geography, and all kinds of things. In addition, he was originally from Shaanxi. How could he not know about the Shaanxi territory? However, when he heard that there was an area as big as Mount Shao, Zhang Feng's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. Damn, this time I'm really rich. Chapter 1237. Li Shimin and Niu Jinda trembled when they heard Zhang Feng's shout. They almost fainted. Just a moment ago, both of them were thinking about the yield of the grain and what the phosphate fertilizer was. But in the next moment, there was a problem. But in the next moment? This kid seemed to have gone crazy. They could not help but jump in fright. Li Shimin was speechless. Kid, can you stop being so flustered? This is not the time to talk about money. Then tell us, how do you make a fortune with this? Zhang Feng heard that and rolled up his sleeves. Come, I'll give you a good explanation. You guys are simply too lacking in physics knowledge. Li Shimin wanted to beat Zhang Feng up. He even started to clench his fists. Zhang Feng saw that and his eyelids twitched. He hurriedly said, It's this thing is a little complicated. I can't explain it clearly in a sentence or two. I'll just give you a simple explanation. 1 hour, it took Zhang Feng a full hour to explain the knowledge related to agriculture, from irrigation, fertilization, photosynthesis, and the importance of pollination in detail. This time, Li Shimin was dumbfounded. His head was dizzy, as if he had opened the door to a new world. He originally thought that these things would be fine as long as there was water. Who knew that this small thing in the picture could be so awesome? In the end, Li Shimin was sent away by Zhang Feng in a daze. Now, only Niu Jinda was left. Niu Jinda saw that everyone had left and then slumped on the stool. He said, Feng Zi, I'm afraid you've forgotten about me? I'm a patient. Zhang Feng finally understood. He hurriedly looked at old Niu, lifted his eyelids, and looked at his tongue. He then heaved a sigh of relief. It's okay. Remember to drink a jar of vinegar every day and eat a piece of croton. Niu Jinda's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Feng Zi, you're asking for my life. Croton, I'm about to shit to death now, And you still want me to eat croton? Zhang Feng didn't take it seriously. This is phosphorus poisoning. Vinegar can only alleviate and eliminate the toxins, but if you want to expel the toxins, you have to go to the intestines and stomach first. Only in this way can you recover faster. Why would I mess with you? We're brothers, so I have to take care of you, don't I? As Zhang Feng spoke, he patted Niu Jinda on the shoulder and shouted outside the door, "Old Mrs. He, bring me a jar of vinegar." Alter. When Niu Jinda heard this word, he almost fainted. From last night until now, his stomach was full of vinegar. The air he breathed was filled with the smell of vinegar. Old He's wife was the person in charge of the canteen at this time. She was basically in charge of the canteen's purchasing and other things. She had already seen Zhang Feng enter the private room on the second floor and didn't come out. When she saw Li Shimin come out, she was outside the door. She didn't expect to hear Zhang Feng ask for a jar of vinegar. Although she didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to do with vinegar. But he still did as he was told. Although she didn't know why Zhang Feng wanted vinegar, she always picked the biggest thing for Zhang Feng. Therefore, Old He's wife found 2 workers to carry a big jar of vinegar into Zhang Feng's private room. Niu Jinda's eyes widened when he saw this. "Feng Zi, you're a magnanimous person. Can you spare me? This is a jar? It's a mother * king tank." Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. Looking at the jar and then at Niu Jinda, he had an idea and said, "Why don't you go in and take a bath? Although it's a little wasteful, I'll pay for it. Besides, it has some curative effect." "You're too much, Feng Zi. We have no grievances. I'm leaving. I'm fine. I'm cured." While speaking, Niu Jinda staggered to his feet. He held the door frame and ran out. He was afraid that if he stayed a little longer, he would be killed by Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was also speechless. Looking at Old He's wife and the others, he could only wave his hand helplessly and say, "Next time, send them a small jar every day. Remember, it's a jar as big as a fist." After the meal, when Zhang Feng walked out of the canteen, the students who were doing running exercises lined up to enter the canteen in an orderly manner. Zhang Feng didn't dare to go to the front door. Instead, he quietly walked out from the back door. However, before Zhang Feng walked out of the canteen, he ran into Old He, who was eating in the back kitchen of the canteen. When Old He saw Zhang Feng coming over, he grabbed Zhang Feng and said, "It's really difficult to see you now." Seeing this, Zhang Feng asked, "Don't you see me every day? What's the matter?" Uncle Ho looked around and pulled Zhang Feng to a corner. This time, he said in a low voice, "Do you remember the 3 old men that you found? They asked me to tell you that the things you asked them to fiddle with have sprouted." Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard this. He couldn't remember at the moment. Old He saw this and said, "Hey, I told you that you must have forgotten. Let me remind you. The things you and the 3 old men planted in the distiller's grain trough in the brewery next to the pub?" Zhang Feng instantly remembered something. He hurriedly asked, "Is what you said true? The potatoes really sprouted?" Chapter 12:38. Zhang Feng did not expect the potatoes to sprout. This was simply the best test subject at the moment. As long as the phosphate fertilizer was tested, it would definitely become the best thing in a short period of time. However, this was just Zhang Feng's idea. After all, it was still early. At least after the new year, it would be important to pay attention to it. There was another important thing, which was that there were only a few seeds. He was not sure how many seeds these potatoes could produce before the new year. However, this good news made Zhang Feng even more excited. Zhang Feng hurriedly asked Uncle Ho to send a letter home. Tell them what I said. Tell them to water the potatoes with feces every 5 days, but only about a scoop each time. It is best to maintain the temperature at a certain constant temperature, which is the temperature at noon now." The temperature was very strange. It was very cold in the morning and at night, but it was unusually warm at noon. Zhang Feng was very worried that something would happen to the potatoes in such an environment. This was their only hope now. It was something to verify whether his soul was effective. It was still in the research and development stage. After all, if they wanted to extract spiritual elements, there were still a lot of deficiencies. According to historical records, spiritual elements appeared in history. It was developed by foreign scientists hundreds of years later. Zhang Feng did not know what he was thinking. He hurriedly packed up and prepared to go down the mountain. Currently, he needed to study Lin Fei in detail. After all, it was still early for other things, but the autumn planting was not far away. If he missed the autumn planting, it would be useless even if he wanted to experiment. Yushernan seemed to already know Zhang Feng's plan, so he did not say anything when he saw Zhang Feng hurriedly going down the mountain. Cheng Chumo and the others seemed to be eager for Zhang Feng to go down the mountain. When they saw Zhang Feng leave, they could not help but burst into a burst of exclamations. Li Chenxian's eyes flashed. He was surprised and doubtful. He did not know why Zhang Feng went down the mountain. However, something must have happened to his lower body. Otherwise, under the current situation, everything had been settled. Why would Zhang Feng go down the mountain? This obviously didn't make sense. At this time, although not many people knew about the phosphate fertilizer on the mountain, Li Qingxian's men knew a little about Lin Fei's miraculous abilities. However, they still kept a respectful distance from this matter. No one dared to touch this thing. After all, Niu Jinda's example had already made many people's hair stand on end. Who would dare to touch this thing? On the other side, Fang Xianling was restless at home. Fang Yai had also entered Chang'an University a month ago. But this was not what he wanted. Every father would think about their son's future. Since the last time he saw Lu Jianhu's broken leg and the performance of Niu Jinda and the others, Fang Xuanling's heart began to feel a little alive. After all, because of the emperor's order, he stayed in Chang'an and to deal with the aftermath. But now, Fang Xianling rarely participated in it. He had entered Chang'an University a month ago. However, after seeing the scene at Zhangfeng Courtyard and the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet, as well as the scene at White Deer College's opening ceremony, Feng Chuanlin's heart was already somewhat unable to hold back. In addition, during the Mid-Autumn Festival night, Fang Xianling and his wife had shown their desire. As a cabinet minister, how could Fang Xianling not know? For example, right now. It was rare that the emperor did not go to court today. It was rumored that he had gone to White Deer College. Fang Xianlin was preparing to go to work after breakfast, which was rare. However, at the dining table he had heard his wife and Fang Yai's wife's strange words. How could he not know what his son was thinking? After all, Qing Yaojin and the others had been showing off in front of others every day, especially after the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. How could Fang Xuanling's family not complain? After the meal, in Fang Xuanling's study room, Fang Yai stood in front of Fang Xianling unhappily. Fang Xianling asked, "Do you want to enter White Deer College?" Fang Yai answered without even thinking. Looking at Fang Yai's burning gaze, Fang Xianling felt a little conflicted. He didn't know if he should wait and beg the emperor, or go directly to Chang'an University to talk about it, or go directly to Zhang Feng. However, after thinking about it, Fang Xianling sighed secretly and hurriedly left the room. Fang Yai saw this and hurriedly asked, "Father, where are you going?" Fang Xianling didn't even turn his head as he said indifferently, "To the pub." Although he knew that he wouldn't be able to see Zhang Feng if he went to the pub, Fang Xianling didn't intend to see Zhang Feng now. He wanted to find a place to calm down and think about how to deal with this matter. After all, if he went to beg Zhang Feng now, he would feel a little embarrassed. Chapter 1239. Yu Lai Restaurant had been deserted for a long time. On the mottled golden signboard, there were spots of black paint and traces of falling off, but there was not a single spider web on it. There was not even a single leaf on the steps at the door. Although it was already autumn, half of the dead leaves on the crooked tree at the door of Zhang Feng's restaurant had already fallen off. It was clear that someone had meticulously cleaned this place. Even the door of Zhang Feng's restaurant was not locked. But even so, it seemed that the woman had not opened half of the door for a long time. There was no trace of being opened at the connection between the ground and the wooden door. Tong Huifang had returned to her usual peaceful state. It was not midnight yet. However, on the streets, there were already many merchants selling goods. Most of them were selling farming tools, such as adjustments made of bamboo, bundles of hose in a row, flat machines, wicker baskets, and other farming tools. They were yelling along the streets for sale. Even the snack stall that hadn't been seen for a long time was here. It was bustling with activity on the side of the street. At this time, it was raining, and the basketball court was also filled with many old and young people. Some were shangqing huaoliang ma, and some were off the court. They were cursing and pointing at the people who were playing basketball on the court. Looking at this peaceful scene, Zhang Feng could not help but be slightly intoxicated. Was this still the original Tonggui port? Was this still the original Chang'an city? Due to the addition of modern elements, Zhang Feng suddenly felt that the things in his memory had begun to subtly integrate with the lobby. He did not know whether it was right or not, but he had done it. He did not regret it. After all, the progress of the era needed to be made step by step. Since he had been through time travel for such a long time, if he did not do something, he would really be sorry for his knowledge. Zhang Feng knew very well that it was better to change the era than to change himself. His change was nothing, but if he could make the entire era move forward with him, then he would have really done something. After all, in this slave society, there were many things that Zhang Feng could not understand. For example, instead of using toilet paper to go to the toilet, they used bamboo chips or the black cloth that the Black Knights used to wipe themselves. This made Zhang Feng somewhat crazy and want to beat someone up. But with white paper, the cooperatives and other things he created, and the slow popularization of medical knowledge and other things, Zhang Feng suddenly felt that the Tang dynasty seemed to be not bad. At least compared with the hypocritical later generations, there was more peace and tranquility here, and there was no intrigue. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and pushed open the door of the tavern. Perhaps he had not returned to the tavern for half a month, but when he pushed open the door, he was surprised to find that there was not a trace of dust on the tables and chairs in the tavern. This made Zhang Feng a little stunned. Originally, he thought that when he opened the door, the place would be full of mice and the musty smell, which would be enough for him to clean up for half a day. But he did not expect this scene. Zhang Feng shook his head with a wry smile and looked at a few children outside the door. When the children saw Zhang Feng looking at them, they laughed mischievously before dispersing in an uproar. Needless to say, all of this was done by these children. The government had new rules. He did not know whether these things were done by their adults or by these children's own initiative. Zhang Feng was willing to believe that it was the latter. Without thinking too much, Zhang Feng got angry and started a fire that had not been lit for a long time. After cleaning the stove, teapot, stove, and other things, he slowly took out a jar of wine from the cellar and drank it slowly. At this time, someone gently knocked on the door of the tavern. Zhang Fengyu reluctantly continued to drink, but the person at the door seemed to be waiting. After waiting for a while, there was no sound from outside. Instead, there was a soft sigh. Zhang Fengyu couldn't help but take a deep breath when he heard that sigh. Because this voice was familiar to Zhang Feng, he could not help but put down his wine cup and open the door. When the door opened, Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned. He saw a white-haired old man wearing a gray robe at the door. He had just turned around and was about to leave. Zhang Feng was not unfamiliar with this person. In fact, he was a little familiar. This person was Feng Xianling. Zhang Feng could not help but ask in surprise, Old Feng, why are you here? We haven't seen each other for half a month. Oh right, why didn't you go to the mid-autumn poetry meet? Also, I remember sending you Valentine's Day when I opened the door. Why didn't I see you? All right, old Chen and old Sun, how are they? I haven't seen them during this time. What have you been busy with? Feng Xianling did not expect to see Zhang Feng here again. He asked in surprise, shouldn't you be at the academy at this time? Why did you go down the mountain? The two could not help but be stunned at the same time. Then they smiled faintly. Zhang Feng hurriedly led Feng Xianling into the tavern and poured him a cup of wine. Looking at Feng Xianling's worried face, he could not help but ask, did something happen recently? Otherwise, why haven't I seen you all this time?